This is the definitive guide for building a full application with Cursor if you're non-technical or just getting started with vibe coding. And in this video, I'm going to take you step by step through the entire process of building a real application with Cursor and deploying it live with payments, database, authentication, APIs, and everything you need to get a live application that can accept payments and get real customers. I'll be breaking this video down into key sections as we go, with all of the chapters in the description. So if you want to jump to any specific part of building an app with Cursor, you can do that. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to build a full application using Cursor, even if you've never used it before. If you don't know me, my name is Chris, and for the last 15 years, I've been designing apps and advising startups on product and design. And with that said, let's get straight into building our application with Cursor.
Build great products. Build great products.
So let's get started building our full application with Cursor, and we're going to go through all of these different steps in this video. And this might seem like a lot if you've been sold on the dream of building applications in minutes by other tools that are on the market, then this might seem like a lot of steps. But all of these are 100% critical for building an application that people can access on the web and actually pay money for, and then be able to store anything that they need with their application, log in, sign up, all of that sort of functionality. And I'm going to show you how to do the full journey for this. So we're going to basically go through how to plan your application, create your first prompt, the structure for an application, what a web app looks like. And we're going to be building a web application here using Cursor, but you can apply the same principles here to building a mobile app or building a desktop app. It would just be that the technology that you're using is slightly different. We're going to go through the setup in Cursor, some features that you might want to know about in Cursor before you start building. Nothing that's too technical here, so I'm going to keep it really, really simple and focused on the key things that you need to know to build an application with Cursor and get it live so that you can start making money with it or turn it into a business or whatever you want to do with your app. Build it for your own business, whatever you kind of want to do. We're going to set up a database, add authentication so people can log in and sign up to your app, add payments, which is often one of the most difficult things to do in building applications with AI. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Design your application, build features, and this is a really key part because it will show you the process of how to prompt, how to iterate, how to test features as you go, and how to not stack up hundreds and hundreds of bugs as you build your application that you end up going around in a loop on to try and fix later. We're going to then create a landing page. I'm going to talk about the different ways you can do that with your app. We're then going to go into testing your application, reviewing your code. This is like the key things that you need to be able to do if you're building an application with AI coding tools, and then other tools and services that you might want to integrate into your app, like analytics, email sending, that sort of stuff. And then we're going to go into deployment for this application. That is how we're going to start. And so the first thing we're going to cover is planning. So let's get stuck into planning your app. So before we get started actually building our app, we want to go through planning our application. And you can do this in as much detail or as little detail as you want, but I like to think about it as just answering these 5 questions before you actually start building anything. And this will just give you a bit of clarity on what you're building, why you're building it, what features it's going to have, what it's going to be called, and how you're going to make money from it as well. And if you are a part of my community or you're interested in going deeper on this, I do have a full planning course in my community to actually create a much more thorough plan for your application. But for this video, we're going to just answer these 5 questions here. So who is it for? And this is the first question that we want to answer. And so the app that I want to build today is going to be for anyone writing any documentation who needs to reference other information. So basically, I want to create, and you can either write this like this kind of description, or you can do it as like a job title or a persona description if you want to. And you can also work with LLMs to figure this stuff out for you as well. If you just say to ChatGPT or Claude, I've got an app idea that's going to do X, Y, and Z. Can you help me identify like what the customer persona is for this idea? So this is going to be an app that we're going to be creating for anyone writing any sort of documentation or doing any writing who needs to reference other information. This is a problem that I have kind of come up against myself. If I want to write an article, for example, and I want to reference maybe other articles that other people have written, written, or different documentation from different technologies, or different press releases from different companies. I wanted to have like an AI document editor where I can kind of prompt it to like write things based on all of this other information and connect all this other information into a document editor. So what problem does this solve? That is the second question here. So this problem solves basically writing documents without any context or having to manually reference other information. So I think this will be a super useful tool to help solve this problem. And I think this problem is going to be one that a lot of people face as well in the community course and also in my app Canvas. And I've got another video on this if you want to go deeper as well. I talk about there being 6 different ways of improving your app idea as well. So from this initial kind of idea of your app, what problem it solves, who it's for, you can also go through a bunch of different steps to basically improve the value of your app idea before you even start building it, and also make it much more likely that someone's going to subscribe or like pay you money to actually access that as well. So the third question that we're going to answer here is, how does it do this? This is really just the features of your app. So what features is it going to have? We could have it, that question could be like, what features is your MVP going to have as well? So we want to write out a list of like MVP features or one feature, and we want to just really focus on one or like a couple of different features that we're going to add in here. So I'm just going to have one feature here, which is basically a document editor, actually 2 features, a document editor that can be written with AI. So where the AI can like write on the document for me. And also I want to be able to add in any text knowledge to use as context when writing the document. So basically these 2 key features are going to be my minimum viable product. If you don't know what an MVP is, basically MVP stands for minimum viable product. That means the minimum viable version of your application that people would actually pay money for and actually want to use. So it's the minimum version that will solve the problem that you're trying to solve, that you're trying to help people with. The reason that we create an MVP to start off with is because we want to actually validate our idea with a quick initial version of our application. And what you can even do here, if you want to, before even building your application, and what a lot of other people like to do, and a way that I've done it before as well, is to actually build a quick prototype instead of the full application, put that out across social, and then see if anyone is interested in the idea. And if they are, just have a simple wait list that you send people to sign up for when you actually launch your idea. And the number of people who sign up to that wait list can kind of be a good indication as to whether your idea is bad or good. The next question that we're going to answer here is, what is the pricing model? So to start off with, we want to keep it simple. So I would recommend starting off with something very simple, like a monthly subscription. So we're going to do monthly subscription here, and just one pricing plan, which is going to be just to access the app, basically. So just you subscribe and you access the app. And we're going to also have a short free trial period, because I think with AI apps, it's important that a user can test this before they actually decide if they want to pay for it or not. And I think like a 1 to 3 day free trial can actually work really, really well to convert people. So this is just going to be a 3-day free trial. That's the trial period that I've done for other apps that I've built as well that's been successful. And that will give people a taste of how it works before they actually decide if they want to pay. And that will allow us to kind of set up the payments in a very simple way to start off with, because we don't want to overcomplicate this. We just want to make it really, really simple for people to get started. And that will also help us to kind of like get the most difficult bit of this build, which is the payments part, over the line pretty quickly as well. And then the last question here is, what is it called? So I'm going to call this Inkwell, which is an idea, a name that I've played around with for ages, but I think it'll be really fitting for this app and kind of relates to the type of app that we're building here, being like a writing app. Again, in my community, I have a full breakdown of how to create a full brand identity for your app that you're building for your AI business. So if you're interested in going deeper into this, you can actually join the community to learn more about how to build a minimum viable brand identity for your product as well. For this, I've already got some design assets set up that we're going to build with that will help us get this up and running quickly. And that is how to plan your app very, very quickly in just 5 simple steps. And now let's move on to breaking down the structure and the tech stack for our application. So let's break down the app structure that we're going to use. Very simple kind of app setup. If you're not familiar with how web apps are usually set up and how the kind of user journey works, works. I'm going to break that down for you. And we're going to also go through the tech stack that we're going to be using in Cursor to actually build our app. This is all the technology that we're going to need to actually set things up and get our application working. So first, looking at the app structure here, what we're going to do is going to basically break this down into 4 parts. This is pretty straightforward, very, very simple. We're going to keep it super simple for the first version of our app. We're going to create a landing page. If you don't know what a landing page is, this is usually the website that you land on when you type in the URL for a web application, and it will give you like a list of all the features, all the benefits, and it will link you to sign up to actually start using the application. That is going to be our landing page. That is the first page that people see when they navigate to the URL for your application. Then from that landing page, that goes into a sign up or a login flow. This is authentication, and this has to have a sign up, a login, and a forgotten password feature on here to allow users to actually sign up for your application and then log into their account to continue using that application again in the future. This is going to go onto the payment step next, and the simplest way to add payments into your app is just to add a payments pop-up after the user signs up for the first time that asks them if they want to subscribe to a paid plan. You might think that it's a bit sudden to kind of like do this as soon as people sign up, but I would recommend always adding in like a paywall as early as possible, because there are some people who are already going to be convinced that they want to pay for your application from the landing page, and we want to capture those people and actually get them to pay for the app and then go into using it. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to do this with a free trial. So users will start their free trial and enter their card details, and at the end of the free trial it's going to charge their card. And you can do this other ways, but this is just the simplest way that we're going to allow users to kind of do payments and then go through to the app. And there's some things that you need to have here for this to work. So you want to prompt payment after a user signs up, but not when they log in. You want to check their subscription status if the user logs in. So when a user logs in to our app, for example, we're going to check with the payment provider that we're going to set up here. We're going to check, do they have an active subscription or not? If they don't have an active subscription, we're going to show them this payment pop up or prompt the payment again. And if they do have an active subscription, what we're going to do is we're going to allow them access to the app. And so this is going to basically allow and deny access to our application based on the subscription status for that user. And there's a few things that we're going to check here as we go through building the application, and I'll take you through everything step by step so that it's super easy to follow. And then the last step here is the actual application that people are going to use, and this is where all of your app features are going to live. This is where you're going to have account management, subscription management, and any features that you're building for your app. And that is our basic app structure that we're going to be working with. To go on to the tech stack that we're going to be using here, there's a few parts of an application that you need to be aware of before you start building. And these are the fundamentals of the majority of applications out there. Some apps you don't need all of this stuff, but for any app where you're charging people payments, you need to keep track of what users have paid and which users don't. And you also need to allow users to store any information against their account. So we're creating a document editor. We would want users to be able to save those documents to their account. So we need to have all of these features here. We're going to have the front end that is going to be built with React and Vite. So I just want to cut this into the course before we go any further here. In this build, I did choose to build a Vite-based web app and not a Next.js one. And I want to make it clear why I chose this and what the distinctions between the two are, just to make sure that you're choosing the right framework to build your app on as you go through this tutorial. Now, if you are building something that you are planning to scale to a lot of users and is going to have a lot of user data or sensitive user data, then I would recommend that you build a web application using Next.js. Whereas if you're building something a little bit smaller that you want to kind of build a little bit faster and you don't need as much complexity there, then I would go with Vite. However, if you're unsure, then just stick with Next.js and build a Next.js web app instead. In this project, we're going to build an app using Vite, but you can absolutely follow along with the exact same steps here, or Next.js, depending on what works best for this app. I think we're going to go with Vite here, but these are just the technologies that we're going to use to build this. We're also going to be using Tailwind for the styling. You don't need to know what these are. Basically, these are the most AI familiar languages and coding frameworks that most AI models are really competent with building with. And the front end is basically the visual part, the bit that you see of your application when you're actually actually using it, the user interface, the user experience, any interactions, where any information shows, any menus, drop downs, all of that stuff, that is the front end of your application. For the back end, we're going to be using Convex here. If you know anything about vibe coding, you might know about Supabase as a service and a database and authentication option. Convex is kind of a Supabase competitor in that way, where it's like your backend or an authentication as a service, but you also have access to everything inside of your code, which makes it really, really good for AI models and AI agents to understand how your backend and your authentication and your database is going to work. That's one other thing that we need to add in here as well, is database. So database, we're going to be using Convex as well. Then for authentication, we're going to be using Convex. So Convex is super useful in that it has these kind of three things wrapped up in this single technology that you can use. And you can also look at the Convex dashboard to actually see the usage of your database and anything that's going on in your application as well. And I'll show you how to connect those things and get everything set up. For payments, we're going to be using Polar. Polar is a payment provider that I really, really love for applications, for web apps, because they act as a merchant of record and they are really tailored to specifically accepting payments for software. And the merchant of record piece is really important because if you're working with Stripe, it can often be difficult to figure out what taxes you need to pay based off of any payments that are made to you. International taxes is a really important thing to make sure you've got covered if you're building software, because anyone from around the world can access that software. And so Polar has that all covered for you. The fees are a little bit higher, but they're a little bit higher because they're a merchant of record. There are some other options here that you could use as well. For example, Paddle or Lemon Squeezy are two also really good options for software. But I really like Polar because they're building a really, really good product for AI software specifically. And then deployment, we're going to be using Vercel to actually deploy the front end of our application. The back end of our application is going to be deployed through Convex, and our front end is going to be deployed using Vercel. And then APIs, we're going to be using the OpenAI API primarily for this. If you don't know what an API is, basically an API is like an external service outside of your app that you can use by basically calling it to get the functionality of that service. So if you want to use AI functionality inside of your application, for example, you can kind of call OpenAI and say, hey, the user requested this thing. Can you do something with some of your tech and then send it back to me? That is exactly what an API is. So we're going to be setting that up inside of our application as well. And I'll show you how to set that up and get your API keys and all of that stuff. And then libraries here. Now, this is something that not a lot of people have touched on when building applications with AI, but this is a very common thing to use if you're a developer. And libraries are basically kind of pre-written code libraries that create some sort of functionality or interaction in your application. Now, I don't know if we're going to use React Flow here or not. We might actually not need to use it for this app that we're building, but it was more to give you an example of a library that a lot of people are using. So if you've seen any of those canvas applications, which have like nodes on a canvas that you can drag around, 99% of those are built using the React Flow code library, which already has all of the canvas functionality and everything mapped out that you can build on top of. This can be a really great way of building a complex kind of feature like a canvas where you can drag and create nodes on it very, very quickly because the library already exists for it. And if you're building a specific functionality and you want to know if there are any libraries for that, just ask an LLM, are there any libraries for this functionality that I'm building that I can plug in easily? And that will save you a bunch of time actually building anything like custom yourself. And so that is our app structure and our tech stack that we've got covered here. Now let's get into setting up Cursor and getting started with the first prompt for our app. So now we've covered the fundamentals of your application, what you need to build, what the user journey is, what all the steps are to actually build your app. And we've figured out the type of app that we want to build and actually planned it a little bit so we have an idea of the features in our head, who we're building it for, how we're going to monetize it, and what problem we're actually solving with our application. Let's get started building our app. So what I'm going to do here is with Cursor, and if you don't have Cursor, you can just go to cursor.com and download it from there. You can start building with a free plan on Cursor and just see how far you get. And then if you want to carry on building it, then you can upgrade to the pro plan. So you don't necessarily have to pay for this straight away. You can kind of see how you go. And so let's set up our project for our app that we're building. So what we're going to do is we're going to click open project here. You're then going to create a new folder here. So I've already done like a version of Inkwell like 5 times. So I'm going to create Inkwell v5 here. This is going to be our project folder. Now we just click open, and this is our project for our application that we're going to be building. When you first come into this interface, you're going to see a few things, and I'm going to guide you around Cursor here so that you get familiar with it before you start building. First, on the left-hand side here at the top, you've got these 2 different views, agents and editor. We're going to be primarily using the agents view here, and the agents view is going to be more familiar if you're used to vibe coding tools or you've used anything like Lovable or Bolt before. Basically, it gives you this chat field in the middle where you have all of these different options, and I'll break down what those options are as well. So you've got your different modes for your coding model that you're using. So you've got agent, which actually builds and writes the code. You've got plan, which creates plans for any features that you're building, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use all of these different modes as we go through building the app as well. And you've got ask, which means you can ask questions about your code base as you're building, and we're going to need to use that as we go through, because chances are here we're going to get some bugs, we're going to come up against some things which maybe aren't working as we expected. We're going to have to do some different things to actually get this to work, and I'm just going to show you the full process the whole way through. You have your model drop down here, so you can select which different models you want to use. I have this set up so that I've got all of my favorite models on here. If you want to change this, you can go to add models here, and you'll be able to add a bunch of other models from the Cursor settings here. We're going to be using primarily Composer 1 for really quick changes. We're going to be using Opus 4.5 for planning and for also doing any backend and database functionality. We're going to be using Sonnet 4.5 for any smaller features that we want to build. We're going to be using Gemini 3 Pro for any UI or design changes that we want to do. And we're going to be using GPT 5.1 Codex High for any bug fixes. And the best way of thinking about all of these different models in Cursor and when you're building your application is like a full product team. It's not necessarily just a development team, it's a full product and app building team. And on a product team, you would have like a product manager, senior developer, front-end developer, back-end developer, QA, all of these kind of different roles. We can do this with all of these different models because they're all specialized and really good at specific tasks. Opus 4.5, for example, is a very high-powered model that is quite expensive, but it's very good at complex tasks and back-end functionality. Gemini 3 Pro, for example, is a very visual and context-aware model that is great for user interface design and design changes, but not so much for actual detailed code changes. So we're going to be using these, mixing and matching the models depending on the task that we're doing. We're also going to be creating rules as we go as well to give specific models even further instructions to specialize them even more. You've got an @ command here as well. So if you're in the chat and you press @ you can reference anything in Cursor or any files in your project, which is a super useful way of reducing the context, saving you money, and also targeting specific files in your app as you're working as well. You can also add documentation, add terminal references, and a bunch of other things as well. You've also got this browser button down here as well, which if you click this and click browser tab, it will give you access to a browser where we're going to be running our application locally. And this is going to give us a very similar view and experience as to a vibe coding tool like Lovable or Bolt. So you can use it in a very, very similar way. And I'm going to show you how to get your application up and running using the terminal, all of those sorts of things, make it really, really super simple for you. So you can just follow every step of the way here. You've also got an upload image button where you can add images in like screenshots. We're going to be creating a bit of a design system for our application from a screenshot later in the build, and we're going to be using that to apply a design layer on top of our app that we're building. And you have this other like drop down here, which basically requires a Git repository to use. I'm going to show you exactly how to set up GitHub, why that's important, and how to basically manage branches a little bit with your GitHub repository when you're building your app to kind of mitigate any risk that you're changing anything on your kind of main app code once it's live. But we need to set that up, and we'll set that up later. You also have in Cursor the editor view, and this is more of a traditional coding application view or an IDE view, and this will give us access to all of our code files on the left hand side. You also have access to a bunch of other things like work trees, branches in our Git repository, which I'll show you how to do. You don't have to know exactly what that is, it's absolutely fine. And also extensions that you can install like Claude Code, Codex, all those sorts of extensions, CodeRabbit as well, any of these kind of like different features that we want to add into our app. And we've also got basically the agent chat on the right hand side here as well, and any of your code files that you click on you can view view and a text editor in the middle here. I also want to take you through, whilst we're looking at cursor and getting familiar with it, the cursor settings, which I think is very, very important to understand a few key areas in the cursor settings to be able to use cursor in a more effective way. In cursor settings, we have a few different things which are really important. One of these is tools and MCP. So in here, you can add MCP servers to add additional tool functionality to cursor. If you don't know what an MCP is, basically an MCP server is a way of any AI agent accessing a specific tool. So it's a way of our AI coding agent inside of Cursor using Figma, for example, or using Supabase. So our AI agent can actually go and make changes in our Supabase account because we're connected to Supabase using the MCP server. That is where you set up MCP servers. The next thing that's really important here is rules, memories, and commands in the settings. And this is where you can add in specific rules for your project or just overarching rules for your entire cursor setup. I don't have any setup here. I've kind of cleared this so that we can set these up as you go. The way that I would recommend using this is not to do anything too complex when you're starting out, just to leave cursor in its kind of default settings. And then as you go through building, add rules specific to your project or just kind of general rules that are kind of going to help guide cursor in the way that you like to work. So an example of a way that you could add cursor rules would be to add a specific set of rules around doing front end or design changes. And you can reference these in the chat as you go. So if I create a rule here, I can go in the chat, and then I can actually add my rules in here before I do any command with my agent. And this is a super powerful way of actually extending the cursor functionality to kind of start almost creating these different types of agents with rules. I'm also going to show you a way that you can even create different modes in cursor here as well. We're not going to do this now, where you can add specific instructions to create your own custom agents for certain tasks. And the next thing I want to cover here is indexing and docs, which is really, really important because we're building with other technologies here. And instead of just pasting in the documentation every single time, what we want to do is we want to be able to let Cursor read and access this documentation for anything that we're using as we're building our app. So all we do here is click add doc, and then we just paste in the URL for that documentation. So what I'm going to do before we start here is actually going to do this for the tech stack that we're using. So I'm going to go and find the Convex documentation. I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to go and find the Polar documentation for payments and paste that in here as well. So I'm just going to go to convex.dev and then go to docs, and then we're just going to basically copy this URL here, go back to Cursor, I'm going to click add doc, and then I'm going to add this documentation to Cursor so that it has access to this entire documentation from Cursor. It's going to go through and index all of these pages here. I'm also going to add the Polar documentation here. So let's go to Polar and then go to documentation. So let's just go to the top level here and go to Polar/docs. Oh, it's just introduction here. We're just going to add this into Cursor as well. So we're going to add this documentation. This is for Polar, and it's going to go through and index all of those pages as well. So now we've added those, Cursor has access to all of the documentation for these technologies that we're going to be using inside our app. And this is going to help the Cursor agent loads in actually knowing how to set up our project properly. So now I've broken down Cursor and how to use it and all of the different features that we're going to be using here, or a lot of the different features that we're going to be using here. Let's go into actually putting in our first prompt and setting up our app project so that we can get started building. So now that we've added the documentation into Cursor, we've had a look through the Cursor settings and we understand Cursor in a bit more detail. Let's start building our app and start with our first prompt. And I'm going to show you how to write your first prompt here, or how I write my first prompt. And you don't have to start with a PRD always. A lot of people will say you need a product requirements document before you even start building your application. I actually think that's not true in a lot of cases. It can really help if you have a very detailed app and you want to go really detailed into the spec for your application. But a lot of people don't understand the technology. They don't understand exactly how all these things are connected, and that is absolutely fine. And in that case, if you get an LLM like ChatGPT to create you a PRD and then use that to actually build your app, you might not even understand all of the technology that it's telling your AI agent to use when it builds it. And it also might have suggested a bunch of technology that you don't even really know, that you don't even really want to use in your app, and overcomplicate things and turn it into this really big application that you don't understand and just has a lot of bugs. And that can be a lot of the time why you get all these bugs when you start building your application, is because you've just given it too much kind of detail about all these different things that aren't really quite right for your app. So I'm going to show you a really simple framework here to get started building, and we're going to go through the full process building this so that I can show you that this actually does work, where you don't have to have a PRD. And what is really good about a lot of these new, really powerful like AI models is that they're going to help us almost kind of write a PRD as we build our application inside of our project, so that we don't have to worry about doing that to start off with. So we're going to set this to plan mode first, and we're going to be using Claude Opus 4.5, which at the moment of doing this video is the best model for like architecting your kind of app, planning your entire app, and building like kind of everything, giving you a really, really good starting point. It is more expensive, but it's worth that at the beginning and whenever you're doing planning to actually figure out all the details of the thing that you're going to be building. And you can use that to give less expensive models a much better chance of building and writing your code that's going to have a higher chance of working, basically. So the way that I like to write first prompts is in 5 kind of separate things. I would use this framework for writing any prompt for any feature as well. First, you're going to give the context of the app that you're building. So this is almost like the planning steps that we went through here. So I'm going to write here for the context, let's create an app to help people writing documents to reference any other documents or knowledge as they write, and use AI to write the document with them as they go, referencing those added documents. So that is our app context. The reason why it's good to do this is because it's quite useful to give the AI agent an understanding of who you're building this for and why you're building this application, because then it knows the problem that you're trying to solve and how you're trying to help people, and that can help inform its decision making as it builds the application for you. The next step that we're going to do here is we're going to add the user journey, and the user journey is basically the steps through the pages that the user is going to go through. And I'm going to add and leave in certain parts of the functionality here, because I think some parts are great to include at this point in the process and some parts are better to leave to do as a separate feature. My kind of goal always with this first prompt when you're building is to just create the basic foundation of your application. Don't try and one-shot your full application. Don't try and build an overly complex thing. Just try and create a solid foundation that you can build on top of and work from. And if this first prompt doesn't work, you can always retry over and over again with a slightly different prompt to see if it sets it up better or differently. That is really the beauty in this first prompt, and the fact that you don't have to like go crazily complex with this first prompt if you know what you're building and you've done some planning before you start building. So let's write the user journey here. So here is the user journey that we've added for this app. The app should have a landing page that leads to a login and sign up screen, and then after users sign up or log in, take them into the app. They should see a simple dashboard that allows them to create new documents and open any document they have already created. When opening a document, the user should go into a document view, showing the document they're editing in the center of the screen with rich text editing controls and a sidebar to let them add knowledge to this document. I'm going to add that's a left-hand sidebar. They are editing. Knowledge should just be plain text for now and should be added as context for the AI document editing controls. There should also be a right-hand sidebar with an AI chat that can write or edit text in the main document and uses any added knowledge as context when doing so. The user should also be able to name this document, navigate back to the dashboard, and also see when the document was last saved. So this is really important in your prompt because it tells the AI exactly how the user is going to interact with your application. And I think this is why it's really important to just build something very simple to start off with that you can actually describe yourself. And part of the reason why I really like this approach is because it forces you to actually think about what the user journey should be for your application as well. Now, if you're not sure on what it should be, you can always work with your LLM or even ask Cursor here what the user journey should be to actually build it. You can always let the AI kind of like figure this out and put in a more vague prompt, but I actually like trying to figure out this kind of user journey first before I start building so that you are actually going to get what you're asking for in an app that you're building. And so we've added our user journey here. And now what we're going to do next as part of this first prompt is add any pages that we need to consider that should be created. So the pages that should be created are a landing page, a login and sign up page, the dashboard page, and a document editor page. Next, we're going to add in any technical considerations that we need for this app. So we're going to add in things like any APIs that we want to use, any technical technology that we want to use for our backend or database, any other tools or libraries that we want to bring in here. So I'm going to say for the AI writing functionality, use OpenAI and set up the database and authentication using Convex, following the Convex documentation here. And we can link to the Convex documentation in the chat that we added to cursor settings before we started this project. That is going to reference the documentation for Convex as it builds. And I'm not going to add payments in at this point because payments is a separate step that we're going to do because it's a little bit more complex and it takes a little bit more time. You could even separate the database step and authentication step here as well. Sometimes I like to do it after, sometimes I like to do it before. Depends on the complexity of the app. If you want to do design first, you can maybe just do the front end and then get the design right and then connect your back end afterwards. But for a lot of projects, I actually just like to set this up straight away to kind of get the foundations of the app figured out before we build anything else. And then also one other thing that I'm going to do here is add a bit of design direction. We're not going to do the full design of the app here because we're going to do that in another step using Gemini 3 Pro because it is better at design. But we're going to give it a rough bit of design direction just to give it kind of a starting point. So we're just going to add in a little bit of design direction here, saying the design direction for this app should be a clean, minimal document editor using serif fonts for a classic and traditional look with soft shadows and rounded corners. So nothing too crazy here. And then let's say create a thorough plan to build this application. And this is going to create a plan to build this full application for us. So let's send that now. And what you're going to see now is Opus 4.5 is going to go through and look at there's obviously nothing in the existing code base. That's what it's going to do here. It's asking us to run this tool to search the documentation, and this is reading the Convex documentation here. And what you'll know, if you haven't used Cursor before, this may seem unfamiliar. What Cursor is going to do as it works is it's going to ask you every time it tries to do something, use a tool or run a command in the terminal, if you're okay with it running it or not. And you can just click run. You can change this to always kind of allow this. But to start off with, I think it's good to see what Cursor is doing and actually kind of learn a little bit about the things that it's doing here. This is kind of running these tools to access the documentation. So you can see here, it's looking through the Convex documentation, the Convex database documentation. Whilst this is doing this, we're also going to go over to Convex. Let's go to an account in Convex. I'm going to log in to my Convex account, and I'm actually going to create a project in Convex for this that we can connect to our app so that we've got something set up and ready to go. So now we're in Convex. Let's create a new project. So we click create project. We're going to call this Inkwell. I'm going to click create. And this is basically going to give us our kind of backend and database and authentication access in this kind of visual UI where we're going to be able to see all of the tables in our database, see any functions that we've got running in our application, any files, any schedules, any logs, and also access the settings for all of this stuff, including authentication settings as well, and also project settings, which is going to give us the information that we need to actually connect this to our project in Cursor. So let's keep this running in Cursor as this builds out the first version of our app. So it says I've gathered enough information about Convex and how Convex is set up. It's now going to see on the right hand side here, it's opened up a document that it's creating, which is a full plan for how it's going to build this application. And this is where I said it's kind of going to write the PRD a little bit for you, because this is kind of the PRD for our project. And .md, if you don't know what .md is, it's just a markdown file. That's just a text format, so you don't have to worry too much about what that is. This is going to go through how it's going to set up our application. So front end is going to be React, TypeScript, Vite, and Vite. Back end is going to be Convex. Authentication is going to be Convex. The rich text editor is going to be TipTap, so it's found a rich text editor that we can add in here. AI integration, it says GPT-4 API. We're actually going to use GPT-5, I think, for this. Styling is going to be Tailwind CSS with custom serif typography. The design direction is here, architecture overview. So it's really good when you're working with these AI tools to build your application to go through and read all this documentation that it's creating, especially to start off with, because this is going to give you a really clear idea of what it's actually doing. You might not know what all of this is, and if you don't, you can always take some of the terminology and ask an LLM what it actually is. If you're learning this as you go, it's going to give you a much better understanding of the app that you're building. If anything does go wrong in the future, you're going to have a better understanding of what's actually gone wrong and how to fix it. So here are the implementation steps. We're creating initialize the project, install dependencies, configure Tailwind, set up the Convex project, define the schema. It's creating the backend for us, doing the front end, the core setup for the front end, creating the landing page, the authentication page, the dashboard page, the document editor editor page. That's going to have the left sidebar, the document editor in the middle, the right hand sidebar, phase 8 OpenAI integration. That's going to integrate OpenAI with our application. And if we're happy with this, we can just either click build in the top right here, build, or we're just going to click build down here. And we're going to keep it in Opus 4.5 because Opus is the best model for coding and doing these big complicated things. So it's really great to use for like setting up your project. Let's click build and let Opus 4.5 build this project for us. As it's doing this, it's going to go through and ask you to run a bunch of different commands in your terminal. What this is doing is just basically installing all of the things that it needs to create your app project, all of the dependencies that it needs. A dependency is basically a package of code that your app is dependent on to run. And dependencies are an easy way, again, of bringing in specific types of functionality or frameworks into your app. And this is a really common way that applications are built basically by developers. So you don't need to know what all the packages are, but it's just good to know like what a dependency is and why it's installing these dependencies for your application. And the terminal, which is all of these commands that it's running. When it says running command, that is running a command in the terminal. If you don't know what the terminal is, it's basically a text interface that allows you to control your computer and do different actions on it. Things like creating a local development server, which you will need to do in order to see our application as we build it. But all of these things are ways of like installing dependencies to a specific folder, adding things, running things, all of that sort of stuff. And so that is everything that it's doing when it says run command here. You can see now it's writing this index.css file, which is our styling basically for our application that we're building. And it's also writing these other files like the vconfig.ts file. And if you want to see all of the code files as Cursor is building this, you can jump over to the editor view and you'll be able to see on the left hand side here, you can see all of the files that it's creating for this application. This is where your code lives, and the editor view is a really great way of seeing all of the code in your project so that you can kind of see what's going on. You don't have to look at it, but it is useful to kind of understand that. And the agent view here is the best view for actually running AI agents and doing AI coding tasks like this. So we're going to let this run some more commands, work through these steps, and you can see on the right hand side here, it's going through these to-dos and ticking them off as it goes. So it's initialized the Vite and React and TypeScript project with all the dependencies. Now it's configuring Convex with schema authentication and connecting to deployment. Once this app is done, we're also going to connect it to our project in Convex that we've created as well. I want to show you how to do that in the next step, which is basically setting up our database and authentication to make sure that it works. So as Opus 4.5 is creating our application, what you're going to be able to see if you go over to the editor is you're going to be able to see this readme.md file. And this is basically going to be a readme of everything that you need to know about your application. So you can see the green and the red here because it's currently editing this as it goes, but it basically is breaking down all the features that we have, the tech stack that it's using, getting started, so prerequisites that you need to kind of like connect your convex.dev account, how to install the dependencies, set up Convex, set up your Open API key, start the development server, all of these things to actually get the app working. And this is going to be kind of your guide to how to actually get the app up and running once it's completed this first prompt. And if I go back to the plan, it can basically see that this is just going through the last steps here. It's just fixing a few things. Basically, it's kind of recognized things that are breaking in the app when it tries to build the app, and then it's going through the code and trying to fix those as well. And this is why it's really good to use a high-powered model like Opus 4.5 to start off as well. So now Cursor has finished building this first version of the app from this first prompt. It's written 2,643 lines of code here across all of these files, which makes this like a very complex task that it's done. Implemented all of these features, and it gives you the instructions here of how to get this app up and running on a local development server. Now, what you need to know here is that a local development server is how we're going to be viewing this application and actually making changes to it as we build features, and also testing that these features work. And this is basically just a server that runs on your local computer to actually help you access the application so you can see what's going on as you're writing code and actually use it as you build. And this will give you a kind of like this preview window when we open it in a browser on the right hand side, very similar to using other vibe coding tools like Lovable or Bolt or Replit would. The other thing to know here as well is that once all of the code has been written by your agent, this will then ask you to either undo all of the changes or to keep all of them here as well. You can click review to review all of the code changes across all of the files that have been made, and that gives you this view on the right hand side here of everything that's been removed or added. All the removed stuff is in red, all the added stuff is in green. But if you don't know anything about code, then you don't really have to do this, and you can choose whether to undo all or keep all from there as well. If you're a developer, this is a really good way of seeing all of the code differences that have been made and checking that they're correct. If not, you can just click keep all, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get this app up and running and see if it works. So now we've started our project. Before we actually get this project running and go through and fix any issues and get our local development server running so that we can see this application and start working on it, first we're going to initialize Git. I'm going to break down what Git and GitHub is for any non-technical people as well, and this is something that I've learned. I'm non-technical, I'm not a developer, so this is something that I've kind of learned to go through this process as well. And basically what Git is Git is kind of secret version control on your computer that kind of tracks the progress of you writing any code to a project. It's a secret folder that stores all of the code for this project and allows you to kind of do version control, and you can do this really, really easily in Cursor. I'm going to show you exactly how to set this up. And GitHub is basically a hub for your Git repository, which is all of the code files, all of the files that you see in this editor view here in Cursor, all of the files on the left here, all of these files will be stored in your GitHub repository, which is essentially just a folder online in the cloud, which is all of your code files, and it's kind of the source of truth for your app. And you can use that GitHub project, that GitHub repository, to deploy your app to an environment that is live and on a website URL basically. So the first thing that is good to do here is initialize Git in our project. And in order to do that, you have to have Git installed. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to git-scm.com, and from here you can install GitHub based on whether you're using Mac OS or Windows. You need to install something called Homebrew if you don't already have it, and then run this command in the terminal. So I'll show you exactly how to do that. Just click home to go to the Homebrew website here, copy this command here, open a terminal. So just go to search if you're on Mac and type terminal. That will open a terminal for you. This is just your terminal, your command line interface, a text interface to interact with your computer, as we talked about earlier. Paste that in here. Press enter. That is going to install Homebrew for you. Then all we need to do in that same terminal is, if we go back to git-scm, is we then copy this command here, and we then will paste this into the terminal as well. So just paste that in there. That will install GitHub on your computer, whether you're on Mac OS or Windows. So then you have Git installed. Now, once you've got Git installed, what you're going to do in Cursor is go to the editor view here, and then click this kind of branch icon in the top left. And then there are two options that we've got here. One is initialize repository. Now that is going to create a secret folder on our computer, and with all of our code files. We're not going to access that folder of files directly, but what this is going to allow us to do is basically commit changes to that folder as we're working on our code, and also roll back any changes to previous versions if we want to as well. So it gives us full control, and also the ability to kind of experiment with our code base without worrying too much about whether we're going to break something, because we can always roll back to a previous version. And you can also do something called creating branches, where you create different branches of your code stored in this Git repository on your computer, where you can work on different features or try different things, and then either abandon or merge that branch back into your main kind of Git repository. That is how Git works. The second thing that we're going to do here is we're going to publish to GitHub. So once we've got a Git repository, which is that secret folder of all of our code files on our computer, we're going to then submit and store that code, that secret folder, to a GitHub repository online, which will live in the cloud on GitHub, and that's going to be our source of truth for our app that we're building. And we're also going to use that to deploy our app onto a URL so that people can access it. So we'll have a local version of our code, which will use Git to kind of manage the version control, and then we'll have a published version on GitHub, which will be our source of truth that our app will actually run from, basically. So that is how we're going to do it here. So let's click initialize repository. This is going to initialize a repository. So here is basically all of the code that we're submitting, that we're committing to this repository. We can add a message here as well. So it's a good habit to get into basically adding a message whenever you commit to your Git repository. So we're just going to say first version of our app, and then we're going to commit this to a Git repository. This is going to say there are no stage changes to commit. Would you like to stage all your changes and commit them directly? We're going to say yes, and that is going to initialize our Git repository on our computer. One thing that's also worth mentioning here as well, and this is something that we'll cover a bit later when we go into testing our app, is you can also click find issues, which runs basically an AI agent in Cursor to go through the code base and find any issues with our code. This is how we're going to have the confidence to know that everything is working in our code, and there's a couple of other tools that you can use to do this as well. Now this is committed, we can click publish branch, and you can see here in this graph section at the bottom, we've got this here, first version of our app. So that is a change that we've made, and as we make more commits to Git here, we're going to see them show up in a list, and this is going to allow us to essentially go and see any previous version of our app. And so let's click publish branch now, and this is going to publish this Git repository that we've created to a repository on GitHub. You can see that this has dropped down here, and this is already, Cursor is already connected to my GitHub account. So if you don't have a GitHub account, all you have to do is go to github.com. This is going to load my account here because I'm already logged in. But if I log out here, you can see here, basically all you have to do is put in your email, sign up for GitHub. That will create you a GitHub account, and then you don't have to create a repository in GitHub, because if you click publish, it will take you through the steps to connect your GitHub account, and then you can just basically create a repository here. So this is called Inkwell version 5. So we're going to create that. We can do publish to private or publish to public GitHub repository. I'm going to do private for now. And then that is going to publish to our GitHub account. So successfully published. Would you like Cursor to periodically run git fetch? And if I go over to GitHub, I'll log back into my account here. We can now see, if I go to my dashboard, if I look at my repositories here, we can see Inkwell v5. This has been created. This has got all of our files here. It's got the README that it created with all these commands of how to get started in our app project. And we now have our GitHub repository with all of our code on our GitHub account. And we also have version control in our app project here with Git on our local computer. And so now that we've done that, let's actually get our app up and running and see what it looks like. So now let's get our app up and running on a local development server so that we can see what it looks like, fix any issues that are going on with it, and actually start building and iterating on the features in our application to make them work and to get them ready to actually deploy to a live environment, and also start connecting payments and these other things that we want to do here. So we're going to basically just go through these steps that Cursor has outlined for us here in the next step section, and we're going to then be able to access this local host URL that you see here in order to see our app. Now if you click on this now, it's not going to do anything. You're not going to be able to see anything. This local host URL here is basically a way of us accessing or seeing what's running on a local development server. So we're going to be running a development server on our computer, and then we're going to be accessing our application, the code that we've written here, through that development server. But you don't need to know how any of that works or even what it actually is. All we need to do is to run these commands in the terminal to get our app up and running. And there might be some issues along the way. There might be some bugs or some things that we get into, or some stuff might come up that's kind of unique to your own terminal setup or your own computer. So we'll just fix that stuff as we go. And that's 100% to be expected. It's not going to go exactly as planned here. And this is where we start getting into this iterative kind of build mode, where we're building, testing and fixing, and then kind of doing that loop over and over again until we get things up and running the way that we want. I'm going to continue to use Opus 4.5 here, but for now, all we're going to do is we're going to go to terminal in the menu at the top, or you can click here as well. You can do show terminal, and it's Command and J to show the terminal. So I'm just going to press Command J, and we're going to get a terminal window up here on the right. I'm just going to expand this view so that you can see it. So here is our terminal on the right hand side. This is already navigated to this folder here. You can see Inkwell v5. So this is a terminal, which is a way of interacting with our computer with text that's running inside of this app project, inside of this folder that we've created here. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy these commands and we're going to paste them into the terminal here. So npx convex dev is going to get Convex running. And so there are two things that we need to do to get our app running and to see it working. First, we need to run our backend. And second, we need to run our front end. So the backend is where all of the functionality happens, if you remember from the beginning of the video. And the front end is where all of the user interface and the interactions happen, the thing that we see on the website. So first, let's get our backend up and running. And when we do this, we're going to have to log into Convex, and we're going to maybe either connect to an existing project that we've created in Convex, which we did earlier, or we're going to create a new one from there. So let's do npx convex dev here. And then it's going to say, welcome to Convex, would you like to log in to your account? So we're going to say, you can either start without an account. So this is a way you can get up and running with Convex very straightforwardly, but I would recommend creating a Convex account and logging in and creating an account if you are using Convex. You can do a very similar setup here with Superbase. If you do want to use Superbase, just exchange Convex for Superbase in the instructions when you start building your app. For this demo, I'm going to show you how to use Convex with your application. So we're going to go to login or create account, device name, that's going to say your device name. We're going to press enter, visit auth.convex device user to finish logging in. So we're going to copy this URL here. We can command and click that to open it. I'm just going to paste this into the browser that I've got open here. We're going to go to this URL. We're going to copy this code. We're going to go back to cursor. You should see the following code, which expires in 299 seconds, PCVZKTVM. And so PCVZKTVM, that's the same. Open the browser. I'm going to do yes, it's opened the same thing here. So you can do it that way as well. Waiting for the confirmation, we'll go back to the browser, we'll click confirm, that is the same code. That is now going to basically log into our account in Convex. So we can do create a new project or choose an existing project. I am going to go to choose an existing project, and then we're going to choose this Inkwell project that we created earlier, and we're going to connect it to that. So this is basically going to connect to our project that we created in Convex, so that when we go to the dashboard in Convex on convex.dev, we can see everything that's happening in our app. So we'll be able to check here basically, and this is what we're going to do next after we've got the app up and running, is we're going to check that authentication and our database works. So when I log in and create an account, is it created in my Convex database? That is a very simple test to just make sure that the database tables and the schema that you create are actually going to be working for our application. If it sounds very complicated, don't worry, I'm going to take you through it step by step, so it'll be super easy. So what this is doing now is it's just connecting all of the stuff in our project here to our Convex project that we've created in the Convex dashboard. So you can now see here that Convex running in our terminal has added these table indexes to our project, and the Convex functions are now ready. So this backend is now up and running, and so we can now move on to the next step here, which is to add our environment variables. This is our API keys to get our functionality working. For any APIs that you're adding into your app, we can add them to our Convex backend, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this next command to set our OpenAI API key. I want to explain a little bit of how this works and why we have to do this with Convex and what environment variables are for your project. So environment variables are basically any sort of secret information that you don't want people to be able to access from your code base, and also allow things like APIs to run on your app behind the scenes, and will connect your app to your specific accounts with any API providers that you have. So if you remember back to the beginning of the video, APIs are like external services like OpenAI or Claude that we can use in our app. We basically call that service. That service checks that we're using our account. It will use the service and then send information back to us. And we're going to store the keys for accessing those services, the API keys, in an environment variables folder in our code base. But that is going to be a secret folder that cannot be accessed. And that is going to live inside of Convex. Here's what we need to do in order to set that environment variable. So we need to copy this command here that it's explaining in this next steps. And we need to paste that into a terminal. So you might notice that we've kind of come to the end of this terminal here. This is running our backend. So we're going to start add a new terminal, and you can just click this plus here and to add a new terminal here. And then we're going to paste this command in here without this your API key here bit. And we're just going to paste this first bit here into the terminal. And then we're going to paste our API key. So if you don't yet have an API key, I'm going to show you how to do that. And you can do this in a very similar way for most APIs that you're using. You would basically go to the provider, you would log in to an account with them or log into their developer platform. In this case, with OpenAI, openai.com, I'm going to log into the API platform here. So we're going to log into the API platform, and then we're going to create an API key. So I'm going to go to dashboard in OpenAI, go to API keys. And if you don't know where this is, you can look at the documentation for whatever API kind of provider that you're using. And I am going to create a new secret key here and call this Inkwell v5. And then I'm going to copy this key and paste it back into Cursor in the terminal. So let's copy this from OpenAI. I'm going to paste this into the terminal here. So this is our API key. If you're worried about stealing this, I'm going to change it afterwards. So don't worry. This won't actually work if you use it in your project. And then we're going to basically hit enter. And that is going to set this API key in our environment variables with Convex. And so you can see successfully set OpenAI API key. And if I go to Convex, so let's close OpenAI here. If I go to Convex and then have a look in my project, which is Inkwell. So let's go to Inkwell and let's go to environment variables under settings. And you can see here, my OpenAI API key has been set. That is how you do that. You can add that directly in Convex just by clicking add and then adding a new API key that way. Or you can do it through the terminal like we've done here, just by copying this command here. And that is how to add environment variables to your app project in a way that is secure and safe and doesn't expose them when you deploy your app. So I just want to cut this into this video at this point because there is one other environment variable that I forgot to add when I was going through the tutorial for setting up this project, which is this vconvex URL here. And you need to set this in both the development and the production version of your Convex project so that you've got this vconvex URL set. And this is basically in this format. So it's the instance name, which is Watchful Bulldog 156, which is the same as it says up here, .convex.cloud. Make sure you add that into production and into development when you're working on this. So you can see I've got this vconvex URL set up here as well, just so that you know you need to set this up alongside your environment variables in Convex, as well as everything else that I've gone through here. And let's get back into the rest of the course. So now that we've got our back end up and running, we've added our environment variables, we're going to get our front end running so that we can actually see this app and see if it actually works or not. So the last thing that we're going to do here is to copy this command here, npm run dev, and we're going to paste that back into the terminal. And this is going to get the front end of our app up and running. And so this will create that local development server for our front end that we can access connected to our back end that is now up and running as well, so that we can see this app and actually use it. So now npm run dev has started our front end and we can access it at this local URL here. Now this is actually different to the one that Cursor provided on the left because I already have a couple of other projects running on these other different ports. It's found that there's something running on 5173 and 5174, so it's actually just running on 5175. And if you hold command and click on this, that will open this in your browser. And this is your application. So this is pretty crazy that this has created this from one prompt. We've got our landing page here, and this now is starting to look like more of a traditional vibe coding tool like you would expect. You kind of have the preview on the right here of your application. You have your agents on the left. You have your AI chat here on the left-hand side as well. And we have our application on the right. You can see that it's kind of followed our design direction here for this app. It's added serif fonts. It's created like some interesting logo at the top here. And it's actually created a mock-up what this app looks like on the landing page here as well, which has the knowledge on the left-hand side, the AI assistant on the right, and then a document editor in the middle, which is kind of crazy. It even kind of gave it a fake .inc kind of document name, which is like .inc for Inkwell, I guess. Inkwell is your AI-powered writing companion to add reference materials and let intelligent assistants help you craft beautiful documents informed by your knowledge. And it's added these sections on the landing page. Get started, it's free. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test and fix anything that breaks in this first version of the app now that we've got our front end up and running. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through our application and actually just test if it all works and then fix anything that's broken And I would 100% recommend using this technique when you're building your app. Instead of, you might be tempting to just jump into building the next feature now. You see like, oh wow, it's been built. Okay, great. I can start building on top of this. But what we want to do is kind of do this in a much more systematic and iterative approach where we build something, we test that it works, we fix any bugs, we test it again, and then we go back around again and build something new so that every time we're fixing any issues that come up with our application, we don't get a ton of bugs and we're not stacking loads and loads of bugs on top of each other that we have to come back and fix later. So let's actually go through this application and see if this works. So we've got sign in and get started. So I'm going to click sign in, see what happens. So we go to a authentication page here. One thing that I do want to mention as well, actually, before we continue, is that this landing page here is built in the same project as the application. Now, that is not always the way that applications are built. A lot of the time for web applications, the landing page and the app is actually separate. And that kind of can help a lot of the time with building a marketing landing page that is SEO optimized and that is separate from your code base, so that when you make any changes to your landing page in your code or any functionality or features in your app, or if you just want to update the landing page quickly, you don't have to do a full deployment of your application every time that you're making those changes. And so that is also another way that you can do this. And what you would do if you were setting it up that way would be just to have the first page of your app be this login and sign up screen. And then you would deploy that to a subdomain of any domain that you own. So say we had inkwell.com, you would deploy your application to app.inkwell.com, and then you would build a marketing landing page using something like Framer or Webflow, or even by just coding it in Cursor and doing it that way. And then you would have kind of like your landing page and your application separate. We're actually doing it combined here to kind of make the process easier for your first time like going through this, but you can definitely kind of split those two projects. And if you're building something where you kind of might require a lot of website and marketing changes on the actual website later, you might want to do that approach. But let's go through and actually test that this all works. So this is set up using the Convex database and authentication, and this is pretty much standard UI for this. I think it might have done some custom stuff here. So it has sign in, sign up. We want to know that we can switch between those. So sign in, sign up. We can add things like Google authentication and those sorts of things later. But to start off with, I just want to validate that this app is a good idea and that people will actually sign up for it. And so I'm only going to use email and password just to start off with. It's the easiest way to get started. You can always add in Google authentication later. It can also be a pain to add Google authentication to your app. So we're going to be doing it that way. You can also use other authentication providers here if you want to. So Clerk or Work OS are two really good options if you want to add a kind of trusted and a tried and tested like authentication platform, like authentication service to your application instead of using the Convex or the Superbase Auth. But for this, we're just going to use Convex authentication. So I can switch between these, which is great. There's also a link down here, which is already have an account, sign in, don't have an account, sign up. That is also working. And here, the temptation can be that I just want to like go through and use it and quickly test that it works. But actually what we want to do is we want to see if every single thing works that this AI agent has built for us here. Now you can use AI like automated testing agents and things to actually do browser use and go through and test this. But I think for the first time building an app, it's really good to do it manually yourself because you'll get a sense of what works, what doesn't, and it'll give you a better understanding of how an app is actually constructed if you go through and kind of test it manually yourself, and also give you the confidence that it definitely is working. You can always use other tools to actually go through and do testing on this later, and we're actually going to do that before we deploy our app here to do kind of like automated testing. But as we're building, we can just do this manually as we go. So let's see if we can sign up, and then we're going to check that signing up here actually adds a user to the Convex database that we've created. So if we go back to Convex here, I'm going to go back to Convex and go to data, and then we can see it's added all of these tables to our database. So you've got all of these auth tables because we're using Convex authentication, and you've got documents and knowledge, which is basically the database requirements for our app that we're building. And you also have this users table. Now this is the one that we're going to be looking at. So in the moment in our users table, there is absolutely nothing there. What I want to see is if I sign up here, so I'm going to put in my name is Chris. Let's do chris@test1.com. And I'm just going to be using test email addresses at the moment so that I can remove those from my users table later, just as I go through and test this. And it also is a good way of keeping track of what you've tested where. So you can also add like maybe the thing that you're testing to the email address as well. So you can use that for testing specific things. So I could say here like testsignup.com and then create a password. So if I want to kind of like go back and see how this email for like testing this feature worked, I can then just reuse that email later to kind of like test the same thing. So let's add a password here. I'm actually just going to do test1.com because I just like going through test 1, 2, 3. It makes it super quick to kind of go through and test. Create an account here. That's loading. Okay, so we've got our first bug. So I knew this wasn't going to be perfect. Let's see what is going on here. So it looks like we've got a missing environment variable here, JWT private key. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'm going to open up a new agent. So with this agent here, we've already kept all of the code for that. I'm going to do a new agent here, and I'm going to put cursor into ask mode. And we're just going to ask a question about this, which is what you can do if you don't understand anything here. So I'm not technical, and this is like part of the reason why I'm kind of taking you through this. You don't have to use Opus 4.5 for this. You can use something like Sonnet 4.5 or a cheaper model. And I'm just going to ask, based on the Convex documentation. So let's go into docs and add Convex documentation. What does this error mean and how could I fix it? So one thing that is really good to do here is not just to ask the AI to fix an error, although sometimes that can absolutely work. What I like to do, especially if you're doing this for the first time, is to try and understand what's happening a little bit. So we're seeing that the answer here is it's coming from the Convex dev auth package, not the standard clerk auth O integration in the document you shared. The error is clear. You're missing the JWT private key environment variable, and that will have a look in your code, see what's going on, where you can add this and how to fix the issue. Let me check your current auth configuration to understand the setup better. Perfect. I can see you're using Convex auth with the password provider. The error is occurring because this key hasn't been set in your Convex deployment. What the error means, it needs this to sign and verify authentication tokens. You need to set this environment variable in your Convex project. Here's how to do it. Run this command in your terminal to generate a secure private key, then convert it into a single line format, or use this simpler command to generate a key directly. Then we're going to set the environment variable in Convex, and this is for local development. If you're running locally, you'll also need to set it in your .env.local file, which we're going to add that to our .env.local file, and we might also need to set the site URL here as well. So I'm going to jump back over to the editor. We go back to file view. Here you can see you've got this .env.local file in here, and this is going to contain our environment variables locally. So this is what we need. We need these in here to basically run this on a local development server. This file will not be deployed, basically. This is our way of adding environment variables locally so that we can get this app up and running locally to test it as we're doing now. So let's follow these instructions and generate a private key. So let's copy this and open a new terminal window here. And then we're going to paste that command, and that is going to generate us a key. We're going to run this command here to convert it into a single line format. So let's do that. That is going to give us our key here, basically. So we've got access to our key here. Looks like a load of gobbledygook, but that's okay. We're just going to copy it and paste it in. And then it says set the environment variable in Convex. So we're going to set this in Convex. Make sure to include the full key with the begin RSA private key and end RSA private key markers with \n for new lines. So you can see it's got that in there, or all of these points in this code, \n, all of these kind of new lines here. And you have begin RSA private key and end RSA private key here. So we're going to copy that. We're going to open a new terminal here, and we're going to do npx vx convex env set jwt underscore private underscore key, and then paste our key in here. And then we're going to set that with Convex. Okay, so this is not working in the terminal. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to go back to Convex here. We're just going to go to settings, go to environment variables, and we're just going to add an environment variable here. And we're just going to say JWT underscore private underscore key, and then we're going to paste our key in here, and then we're going to save that. Now we'll add our JWT private key to Convex. We don't necessarily have to do that in the terminal here, as this was kind of giving me an error when I put it in. So there is another way that you can do that. And we're also going to want to add our JWT private key to our .env.local file here, and we're going to paste our key in here. So that is now there, and you do Command S to save that. And then we're also going to add in this Convex site URL into our environment variable folder as well. So we're going to add that in, and we're going to hit save. Now that we've done that, we need to rerun Convex so that it can pick up these new environment variables. Let's add a new terminal, and let's do npx convex dev, and this is going to rerun our backend. So this will basically get Convex up and running again with the new environment variables that we've just added. So let's reload this, our front end for our app, and then try signing in again. Let's go sign up. Let's go Chris. Let's do Chris at test1, because that didn't create an account, and then do create account here. And we've got this other error here as well. So let's copy and paste this in to a new agent on the left hand side. So we're going to archive this. Let's start a new agent. We've got Sonnet 4.5. We're going to put it into ask mode, and we're just going to ask again, what does this error mean related to Convex auth? We're going to paste this in here. I think this error is related to the same thing to do with the JWT private key that we've got set here. So we're just going to figure that out and get this up and running. While that's kind of happening, what I want to explain a little bit is why I'm using separate agents here in Cursor to do this. And the reason why is that because every single different thing that you do in your app, you want to give the agent fresh context, which means no previous chat history. As you talk with any agent here in Cursor or any vibe coding tool in a single chat, it's going to reference all of the previous chat in the context as you're working with that agent to build something. And so the best way to use these agents is to just use new agents every time you do something new. And what we've got here is basically the solution is you need to set the Convex auth private key environment variable in your Convex deployment. So we're missing another environment variable for Convex. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up a new terminal here. We're going to follow the instructions here, and we're going to generate it directly in this format. And then we're going to add it back into Convex again. So let's copy that command, go to the terminal, paste it into the terminal here, generate this key. So we're still getting this error here. I'm just going to continue to ask Cursor to help us fix this issue in this ask mode, because I think maybe the backend server is not restarting here. Maybe something's happening where it's not in the right format. Something's going on which I'm not sure about. So let's figure it out with Cursor. Okay, fine. So it just looks like we've got a mix of keys here that is incorrect. So we actually need to just have the JWT private key, and we need to have it in the PKCS #8 format. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this auth private key, we're going to edit that, we're going to copy that, let's delete that, will be deleted, save, and then edit this JWT key here, paste, this key instead, let's save that. That should now be the correct key. And now we're going to restart the Convex dev server. So we're going to do Control and C to stop this one running. We're going to remove that terminal, add a new terminal, npx convex dev to get this back up and running again. Okay, let's refresh this, try again. Okay, so it looks like something has happened in Convex here, which is great. So let's go back to our Convex dashboard, go to data and go to users. And we can see here that Chris at test1 has been created, which is great. Okay, so we've solved this issue. We've got our JWT key in our environment variables in Convex. That is now working correctly. When I signed up, it didn't log me into the application. So that is the first thing that we're going to try and fix here. So let's archive these agents now that that is solved, just to try and keep this agent view clean on the left-hand side. Let's do a new agent. Let's put it into Opus 4.5, which we're going to continue using for this first setup of our app, just to make sure it's all up and running correctly. And this is the best coding model by far at the moment. So let's just say when I sign up for my app, the user is created in the Convex database correctly, but I'm not signed in and I don't go into the app after signing up. Make sure that when I sign up for a new account, I am signed in and can use the app. I just want to break down this prompting format here as we're going through this. So whenever you get a bug or an error in an application, it might not always have an error code attached to it. It might be functionality that just doesn't work. So the way that I would always explain that to the agent to try and fix that issue is basically to describe exactly what happened, what went wrong, and what it should do instead. So those kind of three things are going to give it all the context it needs to figure out exactly what's happening. And if you want to add in something specific, so we could add in maybe the file here for, not the README file, we could add in the file here for the sign up page. We could just search for like sign up or auth. And so auth there is our auth.tsx is our page. You can see it's a page there because it's in src/pages. So we can add that page to the context for this, and that is going to scope the agent to this specific page to see what's going on. So let's ask the agent what's going on here. We're going to use the agent, get it to fix the issue. So it's going to find some issues here. We probably could sign in here and get into the app, but I just want to fix everything that's happening as we go through and see all of these errors and get into this process of like, find a bug, fix it, find a bug, fix it, and then when everything works, we'll move on to the next feature. But it's a really good sign to see that users are being created in our database in Convex correctly now. There's just an issue with the user experience here. So after trying to fix this issue with the agent here, I've had a look at the Convex documentation, and on Convex, you can just go on docs.convex.dev and do ask AI to try and figure out any issues that you're getting with Convex as well. But it looks like we're actually just missing an additional variable in our account here. We need a JWT key, and we also need a JWKS key here as well. So it's given us some code to create a file to run this script to generate these keys. So that's what we're going to do. And this, it looks pretty complicated, but I'm going to show you, just follow it step by step. It's pretty easy to do. I'm a non-technical person doing this as well. All we're going to do is create a file in our project by right-clicking in this list and doing create new file. What we're going to do is we're going to call this generate keys.mjs as it's mentioned here. So all we do here is copy and paste this command to generate these keys manually in our project. And then we're going to go back to our terminal here. And I've already just done this just to write basically node generate keys.mjs. It looks like a bunch of stuff here. We're going to copy these keys over to our Convex project. This looks super complicated, but basically just copy this command here, and I'll put everything that you need down in the description for the video below. But we're going to need this to get Convex up and running with authentication. And so let's copy this over. This is going to be our JWT key that we're going to add into our environment variables here. I'm going to paste this into our Convex dashboard here for environment variables. We're going to add in the JWKS. So JWKS, we're going to add that in here, and we're going to copy that over from the terminal here as well, which is basically this bit here, from this bracket to that bracket there. So let's copy that over. Let's paste this in. Let's save that here. And that is going to give us our JWT and JWKS in our project. Now, if we rerun Convex, we're going to Control-C to stop our front end as well. We probably don't need to stop that running, but just in case, let's get everything back up and running. Again, npx convex dev to run our backend. That is going to get Convex up and running, and then npm run dev to get our front end up and running here. And that is now at localhost 51575, the same as it was before. And we're going to go back to our app and we're going to try and log in. So now we're finally able to log in. Let's go through doing the rest of this. And you can see, so the things that we changed there, just to make sure that that's covered, is that we've added a JWT key and a JWKS key into our environment variables in our Convex dashboard. And that has allowed the sign up to correctly authenticate us and let us use our application. So let's test some of the rest of the functionality here now that we've got this working. I'm actually just going to sign out and click get started and then sign in again just to test that this is working correctly. There we go. So we're now logging in, and this is just to show when you do hit a complex issue like that, that you can figure it out by using a combination of asking in the cursor agent here, looking at the documentation and using the documentation for whatever technology that you're using in your app, and then basically kind of figuring it out that way to actually get that fixed and working. So that's now working. So let's try and create a document here. So we can create a document. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we get a bigger view of this. So now we have our knowledge on the left hand side. We can start typing here in our document, make a H1, carry on typing. We've got our AI assistant on the right. We've added our OpenAI API key. So let's see if the AI assistant works as well and the knowledge works on the left hand side. Can I rename the document? Test doc. Let's try and rename it to that. So if I go back to my dashboard, I've got my test document here. That is working correctly. Saved just now. And you've got knowledge, which you can hide, and then your AI chat as well. So you can have just a document editor view here, and we can add knowledge in. So we're going to add I like to do business strategy, and that's sell lemons here, just to test that this works. And then we're going to basically say to the AI, write a paragraph about our business strategy on this document. Let's see if this works. We might have to fix a few other issues here as well. So this is now written it here. H1 business strategy, primary business strategy focused on selling lemons. So it's correctly referencing the knowledge that we've got here. By targeting both retail and wholesale channels, we seek to maximize our reach and cater to diverse customer needs. I can go insert into document, and that inserts that into the document there. So the AI chat is working. It's able to edit this. I might want to add a few features here, but first we're just going to go through and test that everything works here. I don't know what this delete button does up here. Clear all chat history for this document. So let's change that so that's less like actual native UI and that it's actually just going to use like a pop-up in the app instead. So let's make that change quickly here before we start to add anything else. So I'm going to add that to a list of features that we're going to do here. So one good thing to do, and you can do this just inside Cursor, would just be to create a file or a folder in your project. So I'm just going to create a new folder and call this folder planning. And I've just gone back over to the editor view here, and then I'm going to open that folder. I'm going to create a new file inside this folder, and I'm going to call it features.md. And I'm just going to write out a list of things that I want to add to this app. So we're going to say change the delete pop-up so that it uses the app UI rather than native UI. So as we go through checking our functionality with our app that we've got here, I'm basically just going to be keeping track of everything that I want to change on this app as we go. So we've got this rich text editor. We can undo, we can redo. This is pretty good. I want to let's see if all of this rich text functionality works. Let's add some bullet points to this. So the bullet point itself is actually not showing. So let's go back to our editor and go back to our planning document and say bullet points aren't visible on the document. And what you would do is just go through your entire app and just make a list of everything that you want to change here now that this is actually working. We can go back to our documents here. We can create a new document that is going to add that untitled document there. We can delete this. Again, this is going to use this same UI. We click OK and that deletes it from there. And we can sign out. We want to add some sort of like account management section on here as well. So let's add that to our features list that we've got here. So let's do features, add account management in the app. We're going to save that. Let's go back to our agents view and continue checking the features here just to make sure this all works. So I'm pretty happy with this. This has the functionality that I actually want to add one more thing, which is to be able to highlight text and then add it to the chat context and get it to rewrite that text basically. So let's go to features. I've actually just got this open here, which is a bit easier so you don't have to switch between agents and the editor view. So I'm going to say allow the user to highlight text and add it to the AI chat context. And also I'm going to say, let's allow the user to add system instructions that guide the AI chat on the tone it should use, or like writing guidelines basically. So like a system prompt for the AI chat. That's what we're going to add here as well. So now we've got authentication working. We've tested all of the features in our app to see that it's working. Let's move on to setting up payments so we can get that up and running in our app. And that's going to be the final thing that we need to do here to actually get things working and functioning correctly in the right setup before we can start adding some more of these fun features. So now we've got authentication working, let's add some sort of account management to our app before we add payments, because we're going to add a link to our customer portal or customer payments portal into this kind of profile menu inside the app as well. So if I log back into our app here and have a look at what we've got, and we could have specified this in the original prompt here as well. What I'm going to add is just going to add a profile kind of drop down from the top here, or account drop down from this menu at the top, so that I can manage my account and I can access any other information that I want to add there. So we're going to add account management to our app. To do that, we're going to start this new agent. We're going to make sure that all of the changes that we want to keep from all of our previous agents are all sorted, and then we're going to create a new agent here. I'm going to go back to 4.5 to build this functionality, just to make sure that this is going to build this correctly. And then we're going to add in this prompt here to build the account management feature. So what we're going to say is let's add account management to our app. Add an account drop down from the navigation in the top right hand corner corner, so where this sign out link is basically, this drop down should contain the sign out link and a profile link. So it's going to replace this sign out link. We're going to have a profile drop down with a menu that has your kind of profile page link and a sign out link. And then the profile link should take the user to a profile page where they can change their profile details. And that is what we're going to send off to Opus 4.5 here. What we can do here is you can connect to the user details in Convex if you want to, and allow the user to update things like their email address and have that update the user information in the database. We're just going to set up a basic account management here so that we can get the payments added in and actually get that working with our application. And so this shouldn't take too long just to add this in. And then once we've got payments set up, we're also going to add in a link in that drop down to go to the subscription management for the payment provider that we're going to be using, which is going to be Polar in this instance, because of all the reasons that I kind of covered in the beginning of this video. So Opus 4.5 has now added this feature. It's basically added this navigation component, a profile page, dedicated page for editable form fields, name, email, backend update, added update profile mutation to persist profile changes to the database. So it's already added those changes to do that in the database. Let's see if this actually works. So what we're going to do is we're going to test this feature in our app now. What we've got here, we've got this drop down at the top. So no name set, Chris at test4 profile, sign out. If I go to my profile, here's a profile page. Let's change this to, let's just say like Dave at test4. Save changes. Profile updated successfully. Let's have a look in the console, see what's going on. So something is going on here that's not quite right. Error occurred in the dashboard component. Let's see. Let's go to Convex and see if this is updating in our database. So in the users database, whether this is, okay, so it's updated in the database. That's actually updated this user, which is great. So that is working. So let's just ask a question like, what is this? We're getting this happening in the console. What is this error? And do we need to fix it? I can add my name in here as well. So I'm just gonna, let's change that back to Chris. Let's save those changes. Added my name in here. So this will now say Chris. That's got my profile information here. I can save those changes, go back to my dashboard. That is great. And I can also sign out. Let's check that that works. Perfect. Let's log back in and let's sign in. Great. That is perfect. So let's just ask here. Let's just say we're getting profile management is working great, but we're getting this message in the console. What does this mean? And do we need to fix anything? So let's just ask this question, basically. This is working pretty well, though. I'm pretty happy with this profile page. It's just to do with the cache that we have here from Veet's hot module replacement. Notice the timestamp, just do a hard refresh of your browser. So that should fix that issue. So that's fine. So we're going to keep all of these because Opus 4.5 has done a great job of the profile page that we've got here. That is how to add account management into your app. And now we're going to go on to adding payments. So adding payments to our app is going to be relatively straightforward. We have to go through a few steps here. And there's actually one thing that I'm going to do first before we actually get started doing this. And that's just going to be to jump over to the editor, to go to this work tree icon in the top here, our kind of Git icon. And then I'm going to do commit all of these changes because I'm happy with this version of the app that we've created. We've got authentication working. We've got the account management added in. So let's add a message for this as well. So let's say fixed convex auth and added profile management, and then let's commit these changes. What you might get here is you might get an error message if there is a lock file that is preventing these from being committed, in which case we can just easily remove that in the terminal and then commit these changes again. Yep, there's an issue here because this lock file exists that blocks you from committing a change sometimes. So we can click open git log and you can see here. So all we have to do here is open a new terminal and then paste this command in here, which basically removes this git lock file. So let's do that, remove the git lock file, and then try and commit these changes again, and that should commit the next version of our app. So there we go. We've got fixed convex auth and added account management here. That has been committed. We can close the terminal now. And that means that we've just saved another version of our app to our Git repository. And then we can publish that to our GitHub repository as well before we actually deploy this. You can do that whenever you want. And so what we're going to do here now is we're going to open a new agent to add payments in. And I'm going going to copy a prompt that I have written for this from my school community, which is in the lesson that guides you through adding payments. Basically, I have a prompt here that I'm going to copy, and I'll break down how this works in a second. But before we do that, we're going to actually go over to Polar. We're going to log in to our Polar dashboard. We're going to create an account on Polar, and we're going to log into our Polar dashboard. When you first create an account, this is what you're going to see. So basically, we have to do a few steps before we actually get Polar up and running. The first thing we have to do is we have to create a product. So let's create a product, and let's call this Inkwell Monthly. So this is going to be the Inkwell Monthly subscription, and this is going to be a recurring subscription. We're going to do this every month. The select a price type. We're going to do a fixed price, and we're going to set this at 0 for now, just so that we can test this easily. We're going to enable a free trial period, and we're going to enable a 3-day free trial here. And then we're not going to add any media. We're not going to do anything else here, and we're going to select create product. We're going to set a price here of $19, and then we're going to enable a free trial period here of 3 days. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a coupon code so that we can test this with Polar. So let's create a product here, and then you'll be able to see in the product catalog here that we've got this Inkwell Monthly product that has been created. Next, we need to create a checkout link for this product, and this is the page that we're going to send people to when they pay to subscribe to our app and get access to it. And let's select the products that we want to add here. So we're going to add in the Inkwell Monthly product. So you can add multiple products here. So if you have an annual and a monthly option, you can do that here as well. And what we're going to do is we don't change the success URL. We don't add any pre-select discount. We're going to allow discount codes because we're going to add a discount code so that we can test this. The free trial period is already enabled on the product, so that's absolutely fine. And then let's create this link here. So this checkout link is the link that we're going to use for our Polar checkout in our app. And now that we've done that, we're going to do one more thing before we finish up here, which is to go into settings in Polar and to webhooks, and we're going to create a Polar webhook. And this is basically going to allow us to check the subscription status of users when they log in so that we can give them access to the app. And the URL that we're going to use for this is actually going to be created when we add in this first prompt into Polar. So let's go back to Cursor and then copy and paste this first prompt in. So what I'm going to do is just sort of copy this prompt from my school community and paste it into Cursor here. And let me break down how this works. So we're going to have to change some of this as we go through. So let's add Polar payments to this app after a user completes the onboarding flow. So let's say after a user signs up, I want to show them a pop-up to prompt the user to sign up to start a free trial of a paid account. The pop-up should also have a button at the bottom named Start Free Trial. The information shown on the pop-up should show the benefits of signing up for Inkwell and also show the price of $19 a month. When the user clicks the Start Free Trial button, show the Polar checkout in a new pop-up using the checkout link, and we're going to paste our checkout link in here from Polar. So let's go back to Polar. Let's go to products and checkout links. Let's copy this checkout link to our clipboard, go back to Cursor, and we're going to paste this checkout link in here in this prompt using the embedded checkout from Polar as detailed here for React web apps, and we're going to give it this URL basically to go and read that website. So let's just paste it back in here. And then once the user completes their purchase from the Polar checkout, close the checkout pop-up and verify their subscription status with Polar using a Polar webhook. Then if they have an active subscription, take them to the dashboard and allow the user to access the app. Make sure there is an email field captured for users in our database that we can use to query the subscription status with Polar. So basically, we want to do a few things here. What we want to do is when the user signs up, so if I go to get started and I click sign up, after I've signed up, what I want to happen is I want to see a page that then leads into the checkout. So we want to take them to a page which asks them to basically sign up for a free trial of Inkwell. And that will be a 3-day free trial, and then they will be charged after those 3 days. And this is the simplest way that I found to add in payments, just to add in basically a paywall after the user signs up and then grant them access to your application based on whether their subscription status is true or not with Polar. And we do that using a webhook. So we'll use a webhook to ask Polar whether the user is subscribed based on their email address that they sign up with. And if they are subscribed already, we give them access to the app. And if they're not subscribed already, we don't give them access to the app. We deny them access to the app. And so they will then just see the subscription page, basically. So let's make sure there's an email field captured for users in our database that we can use to query the subscription status with Polar. We actually don't need this part. Sometimes with databases, it doesn't create a users table. So I like to prompt it to add in the users table to make sure that we're doing that. But we've already got that with Convex. So we actually don't need to do that. Let's just make sure that this prompt has the right things here. So close the checkout bubble and verify the subscription status with Polar using a Polar webhook to check that the email used is subscribed or not. Then if they have an active subscription, take them to the dashboard and allow the user to access the app. I'm going to put this into plan mode as well first here, because this is more of a complex thing that we're adding. So let's put this into plan mode. We've got the checkout link in here. It's going to give us a webhook URL as it's building this to put back into Polar to create that webhook so that we can test that payment functionality. And then we're going to be able to fix any bugs that come up here with payments as we build it. So let's see what Opus 4.5 comes back with here from this plan. So here's our plan from Opus 4.5. So after a user signs up, redirect them to a start new free trial page showcasing income benefits and $19 a month pricing. The start free trial button opens Polar's embedded checkout in a pop-up. Convex webhook verifies subscription status and updates the user record. Install Polar checkout SDK, add subscription fields to the schema in our database in Convex, create a free trial page, implement the Polar embedded checkout, update our authentication flow. So after successful sign up, redirect to /trial instead of /dashboard. For sign in, check subscription status and route accordingly. Create a webhook handler, update this to add a route for webhooks Polar, verify the webhook signature using Polar's secret, and then create subscription Convex functions, gate the dashboard access basically based on the subscription status, and it's going to create some files here as well. And these are the steps that it's going to go through. I am happy with that plan. So let's build this feature and let Opus 4.5 go through these steps to add in payment functionality into our app here. So Opus 4.5 is now finished. We've got this error, but this is related to some things that we need to do before we actually test this in our app. So it's given us a breakdown of what it's done here with this implementation. It's given us some instructions before running. So we've got to fix npm cache permissions, which we had an issue with when it was running through and setting these up. So I'm just going to copy these over, paste this into a terminal and run these commands. This is because I need to basically enter my password to do this stuff on my computer. And then we're getting an error here as well because it's saying that it can't find the version 0.6.0. So I've just Googled this basically, and the latest version is 0.41.5. So I'm actually just going to copy this over to the agent here and say the latest Polar SDK version is 0.41.5, not 0.6.0. Let's update this. And then we're going to send that back off. So we can't install that package because it doesn't exist, basically. So this is a little hallucination here just by Opus 4.5. So we're going to make sure that we've got the right package installed here. So it's updated the dependency, run npm install to get the latest version here. So let's just do npm install. We might get a permissions issue. So I'm going to do a sudo npm install. So if you're running any commands in your terminal and you come up against errors where you don't have permissions, then just add sudo at the beginning. That is going to basically trigger you to enter your password for your computer, and then it's going to do that command. And we're also getting an issue here. I don't know if we even need this package, to be honest. So let's just try and fix the npm cache permissions here first, which is what it's telling us to do. So it seems like we've done that. So let's do npm install here. I think this is still going to say a package. This doesn't exist. Let's just put this back into the agent here and just ask a question. It looks like this package for Polar doesn't exist. I actually don't think Polar needs a package to run. Check the documentation for setting up Polar here. And then we're going to paste the Polar documentation URL in here again as well. Even though we added this at the beginning, it can just be useful to like add this in. I'm going to do SDK for, this is for TypeScript. So when any of this stuff, you want to find the software development kit or the documentation that's related to the framework that you're using. So here we're using TypeScript and we are going to copy and paste this. I might just want to add like let's have a look here. Let's copy this from here and go back to cursor. So check the documentation for setting up Polar here, and amend the setup accordingly. So let's see. Looking at the Polar documentation, I can see that the correct package is Polar SDK, not polar.sh/checkout. Let me also check what the actual checkout embed package might be called by searching for more information. So we're going to search for more information on this and then actually update the implementation that we've got here. And this can happen, especially when you're adding things like payment and you're also doing stuff like auth. That's why we've come up against some errors here. It doesn't necessarily get it right on the first time. And we're just going to go through and fix all these errors until we can get it to work. So here we go. It looks like, as I expected, if we're using the embedded checkout option for Polar, we actually don't need to add a package. And there is no package that exists for it. So I don't know why it added that in. So that was my initial thought. We've basically done these things. So removed the non-existent package dependency, open the Polar checkout in a pop-up window, which is what I wanted it to do. Polls for subscription status changes triggered by your webhook automatically redirects to dashboard when subscription becomes active. You're currently in ASK mode, switch to agent mode if you'd like me to apply these changes directly. So let's apply these changes. So this is going to go through and make the updates by removing the package, making some changes to the trial page here, and just setting this up in the correct way, which it should have done from the beginning. And usually with that prompt, it will set it up first time generally. So hopefully you'll get better results if you go through this process, but you can come up against errors. This is a prompt that I've used in other AI app building tools that's worked quite well, not necessarily with Opus 4.5. So we may have just needed to prompt it a little bit differently here to get this to work. And let's see what happens after we've made these changes. Okay, so it's now made those changes, removed the Polar package that didn't exist, updated trial.tsx. You can now run npm install to update your dependencies, and the app should work. When users click start free trial, it will open the Polar checkout in a pop-up window, monitor for subscription statuses, automatically redirect to the dashboard once their subscription becomes active. What we need to do is we need to create the webhook in Polar to get this to work. So let's go back and we're going to need to ask some questions here to get this set up. We're going to need to add a webhook endpoint that actually is targeting our app, basically where our app is running on our local development server so that we can test it. So what we're going to do here is let's go through and actually see if some of this functionality works. Let's see if I sign up for the first time. So let's do chris@test5.com. If I sign up here, is this triggering the trial page? So create account. So this has gone to trial, which is actually just not loading at all, or there's nothing on this page. So uncore error, convex get subscription status, could not find public function for subscriptions, get subscription status. Did you forget to run npx convex dead or npx convex deploy? This is running. We've got two errors in convex, basically. We need to fix these. I feel like Opus 4.5 has maybe done this in an incorrect way because we don't need to query the subscription status with Convex. We only need to query the subscription status with Polar. And we don't need to query the subscription status as soon as I sign up for an account. So let's add in another command here to the agent. And I'm going to copy the documentation for Polar webhooks basically here to check subscription status. So we're going to find this in the documentation here. So we're going to go to this setup webhooks page. We're going to copy this. I'm going to go back to cursor. I'm going to paste this documentation in here. So let's update the subscription checking functionality. We should only need to check subscription status with Polar, not Convex. So when the user signs into their account, check their subscription status using Polar webhooks. Give me a webhook URL for my local development server to create a webhook in Polar so we can check subscription status. I'm also going to go to Convex and have a look in our database to see whether, like, I don't think these changes are being made in our Convex database. They're only being made locally in our code. So if I have a look here, we don't have subscription status on our users. We have this subscriptions table that has been created. So it's created a subscriptions table. I don't actually know if we need that subscriptions table, to be honest. So it's going to run some commands here. So your Convex webhook endpoint is already set up at webhooks Polar and Convex. For local deployment, you need your Convex deployment URL. Let me help you find it. Okay, so maybe we do want to check with Convex here. So we've got our env local file, our Convex deployment, and our Convex site URL are in there. Let's go back to our app. I'm going to go back so we don't see this broken screen. Let's just remove this. There we go. So for local testing, if you want to test webhooks locally before deploying, you can use ngrok to tunnel to your local Convex dev server. However, Convex dev deployments already have public URLs, so you can use them directly without ngrok. Would you like me to add webhook signature verification to the webhook handler for security? The current handler accepts all requests, but Polar recommends verifying the signature using the webhook secret you set in the dashboard. Okay, so maybe we don't have some stuff set up in a webhook secret. So we don't have our webhook set up in our dashboard. So let's have a look at what it's added here. So this has added some files so for local testing, so it's given us some instructions here to actually set this up. This is probably what we should have asked for here. Your Convex deployment URL isn't in the project yet. Here's how to get your webhook URL. So let's go through these steps. So Opus 4.5 has kind of said you were wrong, and here's some steps to actually do what you need to do here. Your deployment URL isn't in the project file. Here's how to get your webhook URL. Run this command to see your Convex deployment info. Look for input connected to your project name. Okay, so we know what that is. That's already this one here. So we're going to use that one there. So that's going to be our webhook URL. Your webhook URL will be your project name.convex.site and then webhooks/webhooks/polar. The client uses .convex.cloud, but HTTP routes use this. So let's go to add our webhook URL in Polar. So let's go to Polar and let's set up a webhook to add our endpoint. So it's going to be this, and it's going to be /webhooks/polar, and then we're going to select all of these events. Just for now, we're going to set this to raw. You need to set that to raw when you create a webhook in Polar for checking subscription status. So now we've got this webhook. We're actually going to see if anything is happening in this webhook. We're going to be able to see if we're calling it correctly from our app here. We're going to copy this secret, and we're going to need to put the secret. Basically, we need the set a webhook secret, subscribe to these events. So we could have just subscribed to those events, basically. We're going to need to find out where to add this secret. So let's just ask here, where do I add my webhook secret in my project? So let's send that. So we're doing this in the Convex dashboard because that's where our backend lives. So let's go over to Convex. We should have known that already. Go to settings, go to our environment variables, add a new variable, and then we need to add this variable here, Polar webhook secret, Polar _webhook _ secret, and we're going to paste our webhook secret in there. So let's save that. That was the webhook secret that we've got here. We've added that to our environment variables now. Once a secret is set, you'll need to update convex.http.ts to verify the webhook secret. Here's the updated code. Switch to agent mode if you like me to apply these changes. So let's go to agent mode and let's go apply these changes. So it looks like our webhook is already set up to receive events from Polar. Let's rerun Convex. It says there's found 2 errors in subscriptions.ts. Property ID does not exist on type never, so we're getting some errors in subscriptions.ts. Let's actually just copy these over and just ask the agent as well here. Looks like we're getting some errors in subscriptions.ts and paste those in. Can you investigate and fix this issue if we need to? So we're going to try and fix these issues in Convex in the subscriptions TS file before we continue, and then we're going to test the subscription functionality here and see if we need to resolve anything else. There's probably going to be other errors as we're going through here. So it's identified the issues, it's going to make these changes, and Convex is rerunning. We've still got some errors here. It's doing this again. So 1 error, and it's running again. The errors are fixed. Let me summarize what I did. Okay, that's now all ready to go and running correctly. And you can see in the terminal here where your backend and your front end is running, what's going on with the backend and the front end as they kind of do stuff. So we've got that fixed there. So let's refresh this. Convex seems to be good. Let's go. I'm logged in. We can go to dashboard. Okay, now we're getting the trial page here. Amazing. So we've got our trial page. Unlock your writing potential because we're not subscribed with Polar. We checked the subscription status. It said this user based on the email address is not subscribed, hopefully. Let's go back to Polar. So we don't have any events in our webhook. So I don't think we've called this correctly here. Let's see what happens if we go start free trial. So when we do start free trial, what we want this to do is to load the Polar checkout, which this is done, which is perfect. Inkwell monthly. So that is working correctly. We're linking to the Polar checkout from here. Now what we want to do is we're going to go into Polar and we're going to set up a discount code. So go to products, go to discounts, do new discount, and let's call this test payments. Let's give this, the code is test, percentage discount is going to be 100%, and then let's create this discount code. So let's copy the discount code test. We'll go back to this. We're going to enter our information here, and then we're going to add the discount code test here. So actually I'm going to just apply that discount code test. That's going to take it down to $0 a month, so I don't have to enter my card details. Let's do start trial, and what we want to see here is that basically we do have to enter the card details. And now we're just going to click start trial here. This is going to process this payment with Polar. It's saying this at test5.com is not a valid email address. The domain name test5.com does not send email. So this is basically saying that this is not a valid email address here to actually test the payments with Polar. So what we're going to do is let's log out of our account. So what we might want to do here is we're going to cancel the front end here. We're going to do npm. Let's just check that that's not running anymore. That's not running. npm run dev, get this up and running again. So it says go to dashboard, open dashboard. We're seeing this screen here. We're going to want to add in a logout if you've used the wrong account here. So I'm actually just going to start a new agent for this task. We can kind of create multiple agents here with different tasks going and work back and forth with them to update the code as we go. So I'm going to say to this agent, let's go back to this agent here and let's say keep all, because we want to keep all of this code. We'll do a new agent and we're going to say let's add a link to the trial page in this app that says logged in with the wrong account, log out. That allows the user to log out of their account so they don't get stuck on the trial screen. And we're going to do at trial.tsx because that's the page. And we're going to add this to this page just to let us log out so that we can test this. Basically, we should be using a real email address here to test this payment functionality that we've got set up. You can also use the Polar Sandbox to test this, but I'm just showing you how to do this with the actual Polar account and instead of using the sandbox here so that you can kind of get things up and running and understand the concepts of setting up payments here. This is not necessarily the best way to do it, and you should probably do it with the sandbox first. But this just shows you how to set up Polar and get payments up and running in your app. So this has now added the logout to this payment. So now we can log out so we can actually test this properly now. So let's keep all from that agent. We're going to go back to the Polar payments agent here and we're going to continue working with this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign up with a real email address, and then we're going to test the Polar payments here. So let's use a real email address, and we want to check that all parts of this flow are going to be working. Create account, then we're going to go to the trial screen, which is perfect. So start free trial. Let's just go to Convex, go to our database, user tables. We can see that Chris at telescope.design has been created. Now we're going to click start free trial. That's going to take us to the Polar payments screen here. So Chris at telescope.design. Let's add payment details here and let's add the discount code test here and just apply that so that we can get this working. So that's applied. Let's click start free trial. That should process this payment for this real email address, which is 0 basically. So we've been able to go through the Polar checkout here successfully, but it's not redirecting us back to the app after the checkout is completed. It's just keeping us in this browser window. Let's make a note of that. I'm also going to switch over to using the Polar Sandbox here because that is the correct way to do test payments with Polar. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Polar Sandbox website, which is just sandbox.polar.sh, and we're basically going to log in to our account and we're going to set up a new organization, which is going to be called Inkwell Test. Let's create that and let's create a product and a checkout link in the Polar Sandbox. So this is Inkwell monthly test. So we're just calling it test just so that we know this is going to be a recurring subscription, $19 a month, the same as we had set before. And then let's enable a trial period of 3 days on this and then click create product. And then we're going to create a checkout link here as well in the sandbox. So this is Inkwell checkout test. We're going to select this product and we are going to allow discount codes and then click save. That's going to create our checkout. We're going to copy that checkout link. We're also going to go to settings and we're going to set up a new webhook in here as well. And this is going to be the same webhook that we used in our main Polar account. So let's go to webhooks. Let's copy this webhook address. Let's go back to this. Let's select raw, select all, and then create this webhook in our sandbox. Now we've got this webhook in our sandbox, and we are also going to go back to our products, checkout links. We're going to copy this checkout link, and I'm going to disable this webhook in our main Polar account, just so that it's not using this. We can also see that there has been a bunch of deliveries here based on the checkout that we went through just then for this webhook, but they've been given a 404, which is not great. So what we're going to do is let's go back to our sandbox. We've got this now in our sandbox and this is enabled. So let's keep this open so we can see what's going on with our webhook. Let's go back to our app. Let's update the Polar checkout URL to this. So all we have to do here with the sandbox is to update our checkout URL basically. So we copy that over, paste that in here. Let's send that to the agent. We're going to get it to update our Polar checkout URL. Then what we're going to do is we're going to also follow up here by saying when the Polar checkout is complete, redirect the user back to the Inkwell app dashboard and check their subscription status using the Polar webhook. If they have a Polar subscription, then allow them access, and if they don't, show the trial page. So that's what we're going to do here to fix this issue. Let's send that off as well. So that's updated the checkout URL to the sandbox here. Let's go back to our local host. So now we can open the dashboard. We get this trial page, a start free trial. This is the sandbox checkout page now, which is correct. So that allows us to test Polar with test payments. And what we're going to do here is it's just researching here to figure out how to do this subscription checking using the webhook after the checkout is complete. That's what we want to get it to add to our app here. So what it's done here as well, which is quite good, it said it's going to redirect users back to the app after their checkout and create a success page that waits for the webhook to confirm their subscription, which is great. So here are the changes that it's made. Created a checkout success page, shows a thank you message, redirects to the dashboard once the webhook confirms the subscription, updated trial page, change from pop-up to redirect flow, adds success URL parameter, pre-fills customer email from their account. I'm not sure we need to do that. Removed unused state effects, added route in app.tsx. User click start free trial. Browser redirects to Polar checkout. User completes payment on Polar, redirects to checkout success. Meanwhile, Polar sends the webhook to update the subscription in Convex. Checkout success page detects subscription is accessed and redirects to dashboard. If no, subscription gate redirects back to trial. So this should hopefully work. The success URL parameter may need to be configured in your checkout link settings in the dashboard. Some checkout link configurations handle redirects definitely. Test the flow to confirm it works with your sandbox setup. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to reload this app. Let's go back to the home page, go to dashboard, we're logged in. Let's log out, logging out here, sign up. We're going to use a test account here because we're using the sandbox, so we can do that. Let's create an account. We're going to see the trial page. That is great. We're going to click start free trial. That's going to go to the sandbox payment page, the checkout page for Polar. We can test the sandbox checkout with just these card details here. So any day in the future will work as well. 1, 2, 3. Cardholder name, Chris, and then discount code here. We haven't set up a discount code. So this is got 22. This is not going to matter because this is just on the sandbox anyway, so we can do start trial here. We don't need to set up a discount code here because we're not testing this using our real Polar dashboard. All we have to change when we want to change over to that is to enable the webhook in our Polar dashboard and also to update the checkout link to the correct one. So this is not redirecting back to the app. So let's see what's going on in the console here. Nothing is happening here. There's 4 issues. Nothing is happening in the console. So the Polar checkout is not redirecting. So we have to add in the redirect URL into the checkout that we've created in Polar. So let's add the success URL here, which is going to be https localhost 5175 / and what have we got here? We've got checkout success. So here we go. Let's paste that back into there. Let's add that into there. We're going to save this checkout. We're going to try going through this again. So let's go back to localhost, go to dashboard, log out, sign up. Let's create a new account here. Chris@test7.com. Here we go, create an account. We'll go to this trial page, start free trial. That should load the Polar checkout here. We're going to put in the fake card details here and then the cardholder name, and then we're going to start trial. This should redirect us now back to the success page. So that has gone back to this page here. So I actually don't know if this checkout success is working. So let's go to that page. It might just be success. Let's ask the agent here, and what URL should I add to the Polar checkout link to test this locally. But let's just ask that question. It should give us an answer here. So it's saying it should be this, which is correct. So this is what we've added, 5175. So if that port's busy, it should be 5175. We're running on 5175. So we're going to do that. Let's just paste this in here. I think it's just HTTP, not HTTPS, which is probably what's causing the issue here. So let's save that link and just try this again. So let's open the dashboard. Log out here, sign up, Chris at test8.com, create a password. I don't know why I always do like my real password there. Start free trial. That's going to the Sandbox checkout. Perfect. 4242. We've got no discount code. Start trial. Now this should go back to the success page. So let's go through and try this again. Chris1 at test.com. We're still getting an error that test8.com doesn't accept emails, so we can't go through the checkout that way. Create an account. Let's do the free trial, which takes us to the Polar Sandbox checkout here. Enter the card details. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Start trial. Payment successful. So this should now redirect us back to the success page. Then we're going to see if the webhook fires to check the subscription status and give us access to the app. So we're going back to the app here. Thanks for subscribing, confirming your subscription. What we can do here is we can have a look in the console to see what's going on. So it doesn't look like anything is happening. Oh, maybe it is. There we go. Confirming your subscription. Your subscription may be processing. Go to dashboard. That's not great. Confirming your subscription. Let's like screenshot this. So what we can do here is we can do take screenshot, and that will add the screenshot to the context of the chat here. I'm just going to click go to dashboard. It doesn't actually let me go to the dashboard. And if we go back to our webhook in Polar, we can see if anything has actually happened here. So let's have a look at the details for this webhook. And you get a load of 404 errors for these events here that have happened. So let's go back to Cursor and see if we can fix this issue. This is usually the tough part that I've found from setting up payments in apps like this, is that it takes a while to get the webhook working correctly so you can query subscription status. So let's have a look what's going on. So we're going to put this into the agent mode here. And I've said the Polar checkout returns the user successfully to the success page, but the webhook to check the subscription status with Polar doesn't seem to be firing or isn't working correctly. Can you help me figure out why this isn't checking the subscription status correctly and how to fix this? Let's send this off with the screenshot that we've got here as well that we've taken from the Cursor browser. This is why it's great working. Part of the reason why it's great working with Cursor as well is because you have these other controls in here. You can take a screenshot, you can select an element on the page, and we'll be doing this a lot more when we get to the design part of this tutorial video as well. So this has now made some fixes here. So basically it's updated the subscription lookup. It now checks for both user ID and email as a fallback, added detailed logging to Convex, and added linking and debugging to the checkout success page. Open your browser console and check for logs when you're on the success page. Also check your Convex dashboard logs to see if webhooks are being received. Go to dashboard.convex.dev and look at your project logs tab. So let's go to the logs here and let's see what we've got. So we've got get subscription status here. This is happening. So this is working and it's a query, and this is calling this get subscriptions function here. The thing is, I don't think in the database yet we have is querying subscriptions. So the subscriptions data. Thing is, we don't have anything in subscriptions. So when a user signs up through Polar, it's maybe not adding it to our Convex database. So that could potentially be the issue here. It also says common issues to check here. So is the webhook configured in Polar? It is configured in Polar, but we are getting an error in Polar. So that may just be because no information is being returned from Convex, potentially. Let's ask the agent here. Let's say it looks like the webhook query is coming through in the Convex logs, but in the database subscriptions table, no data exists. Should users be added to this when they sign up with Polar so that we can check their status? Let's just ask that question here. We should probably have put it in ask mode there, to be fair, but it will figure it out. So let's see what it's suggesting here. The webhook is arriving, but data isn't being saved. This usually means that email extraction is failing because Polar's payload structure differs from what we expected. Let me add better logging and fix the data extraction. So this is also an issue that's happening here as well. So what we want to see here, I think, is when we go into this subscriptions table, we want to see some subscriptions coming through to Convex. So now it's saying we need to trigger another subscription test here and just check in the Convex logs for this detailed output. So just asking these questions, it's giving us more information to actually complete the test for this app. So let's sign up with a new email here, chris3@test.com. Let's go through to the free trial to the Polar Sandbox here, add the card details, and let's start our free trial. We'll get to the success page here. We're going to have a look in the logs, and we're going to have a look in the console logs in the browser here as well, and in the Convex logs to see what's going on. Okay, so we've landed on the success page here. Let's have a look in this. So has access false, status none. So this is basically what we're getting when we check the subscription status. So this is going to be partly an issue here. We're going to add this back into the chat here, and let's have a look in Convex. So this table is still empty. So this is not being added to our subscriptions table. Let's have a look in the logs. And let's see what's going on here. So get subscription status. So we are looking for success, subscription saved for this, or no email found in this event, or extracted email null. Let's see. Sign in, success. What I'm going to do here, I'm just going to take a screenshot of this as well. Basically, these are all the events. So I don't think we've got anything here which is adding to this subscriptions table here. So let's add these two screenshots in here to the chat and say, here are the Convex logs. The console shows that has access is false. The Convex logs seem to show no entry in the subscriptions table being created. Identify the issue and fix this. So now we're giving it a little bit more context here to help it figure out what is going on. We get this fallback on the thank you for subscribing page when it can't actually figure out the subscription status, where we can click back to trial page or go to dashboard, but ultimately both is just going to send you back to the trial page because you don't have an active subscription. So let's see. Looking at our Convex logs, I don't see any webhook requests coming in at all. And that's what it looks like. The log shows get subscription status, but no post webhooks. Polar HT. This means Polar isn't sending the webhooks to your Convex server, or it's configured incorrectly. Check your Polar dashboard. Is a webhook endpoint configured? Find your Convex HTTP URL. Look for an output like this. So maybe we just need to have this as it's .site instead of .cloud. So maybe we need to change that in the Polar webhook. Let's have a look. Let's go to the sandbox for the webhook and then figure out, we may have a different secret here as well, to be fair. So actually we've got a different secret. We need to update that in Convex. Let's update the secret here. This is the correct secret for this webhook. Let's update the webhook as well. So let's just copy this and then say, is this the correct webhook address? And I'm just going to go through this and test this with the right webhook secret now, because that might have been causing the issue. So let's go through here. It's going to say we already have an active subscription, I think. Let's do this again. So let's log out of here. Let's sign up, create a new account. Let's start free trial here. Let's add the card details in. So it says you need to change .convex.cloud to .convex.site. That's what I thought was the case. So that's what we're going to do here. Let's go back into Polar. Let's create a new webhook here. Select all, set this to raw, create that webhook. We need to copy this secret. So this is the actual webhook. And we're going to go back to Polar. We're going to update the webhook secret here. Save this, go back to cursor, and then let's go through this here. So we now updated all of those. Let's see, that's updated correctly. The webhook is here. So we're going to check what's coming through here. So yeah, we just needed to have that. Let's try it. And let's have a look in the console to see what's going on here. We're still getting has access is false. Let's go back to the webhooks though. We'll see now status is 500. We're getting a 500 error on the webhook requests here. And if I go over to Convex, we're going to go have a look at the logs again, and I can see that we're getting this post request, but we're now getting this error. So let's copy this error over and say Polar is now making a post request to Convex, but we're getting this error. And then we're going to say, help me understand why this is happening and fix the issue. And let's see what Opus 4.5 comes back with here. So this has given me a quick fix here, basically to skip signature verification to get the webhook working, and then we can add proper verification back in later. here's the fix for this file. So we're going to do this just to get the webhook working and see if it can do. It says switch to agent mode, and I can apply this for you. So let's just say apply this change. So let's do that. And let's get it to apply this change so that we can test that this webhook works and go through the checkout process to see what happens here. So we're going to test the checkout flow again here and look for this Polar webhook received in the Convex logs. And hopefully we see this success message here to see if we get anything in Convex. If I go back to Convex and see the logs, we can see all of these errored, basically webhook post requests that we're trying to add something to the subscription table here. If we go back to our database and look at the subscriptions table, we've still got nothing in here. So what we want to see is we want to see something coming through here, and we want to see something successfully posting to that table in the logs. And hopefully we're going to be able to do it from this. So let's go through and test this again. So we're going to sign up for our app here. We're going to do test.com, create an account, and we're going to sign up, start our free trial. We're going to go through the Polar Sandbox checkout here, and we're going to complete this checkout. This is going to redirect us back to the success page, and then we're going to be able to go and see in the logs whether this is successfully adding this to our Convex database. So thank you for subscribing. We're activating your account. This usually takes just a few seconds. This is where it's sending that webhook. So let's go and have a look. So we're still getting an error here, basically. Let's copy this error and let's see. It's basically invalid character error this time instead. So type name null. It looks like everything coming through is null, or a lot of things coming through is null basically. If we go over to, I'm going to stop this running here as well, because otherwise that will keep querying. So I'm going to go back over to the webhook here. Let's refresh this and see this time. So we've got these 500 errors in this Polar webhook here. So let's try and fix this issue. So let's try and fix this with the cursor agent. So I'm going to say we're still getting this error in the Convex logs, and the Polar webhook is showing a 500 error against any deliveries. Help me address and fix this issue. So the changes might not have been deployed to Convex. Let me check the current file, ensure it's correct, and then we'll redeploy. So we might just have to restart. The issue is that Convex hasn't received the updated code yet. The old version is still running. Okay, so we just needed to deploy those changes to Convex. I'm going to have to rerun this command in the terminal. Let's run this, see if Cursor can run it for us. Do you want to push your code to your production environment? You're currently developing against your development deployment. Your production deployment serves traffic at this. Make sure your published content is configured with this URL. Cannot prompt. So we don't want to npx convex dev. We don't actually want to run our production environment here, because this is going to be different. Okay, well, something happened here. We are running this convex npx convex dev command to kind of rerun a convex, and what we are getting here is we are getting a bunch of stuff. So the Polar webhooks look like they might be working now. So we've got email, extracted email, customer ID, null subscription ID. So let's have a look, because this seems to be working. Okay, so we've got a green code here in the Polar webhooks, status 200, which is perfect. And if we go to Convex and have a look in the logs, we've got post processing subscription event, and we go to our database and have a look in subscriptions. We've got a subscription event here. This user has an active subscription. So this is now all working correctly. So if we log out again, we can just go through and test this full flow. So let's start writing. Let's sign up. Let's do Chris and then Chris7@test.com and then run this, create our account. We should go to the trial page here. Let's start a free trial. This should take us to Polar. And then we're going to do the test details for the Polar card here. And then we are going to complete checkout. That should take us through to the checkout success page here, and then that should successfully check the Polar webhook to see if we have an active subscription and then take us to our dashboard, hopefully based on this change. So let's see. Okay, thank you for subscribing. We're activating your account. This usually takes just a few seconds. Let's have a look in Convex in the logs. So it looks like it's posting correctly. Let's go to our database table, subscriptions. We've got a new subscription in here. We go back to here. We've got our dashboard. So this is now working. And if I sign out here and I click sign in and I sign in using chris7@test.com, then this should let us in to the dashboard. It does. So the last thing that we have to do here to get payments up and running is add in account management to our drop down here so that we can go and manage our subscription in Polar from our application. So let's do that with a new agent. Let's keep all from this agent, which completes that agent's work. Let's do a new agent here, and we're going to add in the customer portal so that you can check your subscription status in Polar and change or cancel or do whatever you want to do there. So now we've added payments with Polar and got them working. We're going to add in our customer portal, which is going to link to basically the Polar customer portal for that customer. So with this email address, chris7@test.com, I can then click on a link in this navigation that says manage my subscription, and that will take me to my Polar dashboard where I can change or cancel my subscription at any time, basically. And there are already documents on Polar how to do this, and I already have a prompt that I'm going to take from the lessons in my community, which basically helps you do this as well. So let's copy that prompt over to here. Let's put it into a new agent in Cursor. We say, can you link to a menu from the user's profile icon in the app? So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to say, can you add a link to the profile menu in the app? This link would be called manage subscription. Clicking this should link to the Polar customer portal for the user's email address to manage the user's subscription following this documentation. And we're going to link the Polar documentation there for adding a customer portal as well. But let's put it in plan mode first, because I think this is just going to plan how to do this with Convex and with this app. And it's just good practice generally if we're adding any sort of more complex feature or anything that's going to touch anything like payments, that we're going to basically get it to plan this first before it actually builds this feature. So Opus has already gone to the browser for this to actually read this documentation. It's captured a screenshot for some reason, but it's going to be using the documentation that we added into the cursor settings and the documentation that I linked here as well. I don't know why it's taken a screenshot. It's a bit strange. Let me scroll through the page to get more details. Maybe it needed the screenshot to kind of reference later. Looking at the summary, you can see you've been working on adding a managed subscription link to the profile menu. Let me check the current state of the profile menu to verify the implementation and check for any issues. Let's go back to localhost here, go to our dashboard. So it's kind of reading the code base at this point to understand how we have implemented this. So here is what it has done in this. We now have a managed subscription link on the right here. So it's added that links to the Sandbox customer portal with the user's email as the query parameter. Optionally includes the public key if Vite Polar public key is set in your environment. Opens in a new tab with proper scrutiny attributes. Only displays when the user has an email address. Uses a credit card icon that matches the existing style UI. Added type definition for the optional Polar public key environment variable. To configure the public key, add to your env file, basically your Polar public key. I noticed your app uses a Polar Sandbox environment, so I've linked to sandbox.polar customer portal. When you move to production, we want to move to the actual customer portal instead. What we're going to do is we're going to open this in our browser and check that this works, because this is going to open. I mean, let's just click on it here and see what happens. Okay, so that links to there, and it basically, it can't figure out what it's doing. So let's see if we can figure out what is going on here. So we might want to add our Polar public key. I'm not even sure that that is the right way formatting for our Polar key. We can basically go into settings and general, scroll down to the bottom here, add an access token for this. So let's call this Inkwell, and expires, no expiration. Let's have it with all of the scopes and create our public key in here. This is our Polar access token to authenticate with the Polar API. I don't know if we actually need this. This is going to be in our .env file here. We might also need it in Convex. So let's go to this env local file. We're going to add this in here. I'm actually not going to add this because I think we can try and figure this out slightly differently. So let's go back to agents. And what I'm going to try and do here, we're just going to see if this is set up correctly. So we've got managed subscription. It goes to that. So it goes to a 404 basically. Let's just ask the agent a question. So I said, when I click on the managed subscription link in the profile menu, I'm taken to a Polar 404 page. Based on the Polar documentation for the customer portal, what do I need to set up to get this working correctly? Take me through this step by step. And this is going to figure out how I need to set this up, hopefully, and then guide me through that process step by step. And you can always ask in ask mode here for it to break it down for you, so you can go step by step through actually be fixing any issues that you're coming up against and adding any functionality. Okay, here we go. So this is going to break it down in a little more detail here. So step by step, setting up the Polar customer portal, log into your Polar Sandbox, go to your organization setting, find your organization slug, and then understanding the two approaches offers two ways to implement the customer portal, either a simple link with no authentication or a pre-authenticated link. Generate a magic link via API so users go straight to their portal without re-authenticating. I think this is the best one. Let's do option B. So this is going to require storing a Polar customer ID. You're already doing this via webhooks, so that's great. In the subscriptions table, create a Convex HTTP endpoint to generate a customer session, so we can do that. Get a Polar access token, which we've just created in Polar. Create a new access, add it to your Convex environment variables, and use navigation.tsx to call this endpoint. Let's put it into agent mode, and let's go with option B, the pre-authenticated link using the Polar access token. So let's get it to do that. And whilst that's doing that, we're going to go to our Polar access token, copy that over, go over to Convex, and then go to settings, environment variables, and then we're going to add our Polar access token variable here. This is going to be called Polar underscore access underscore token. So let's go over and do that. So we're going to go Polar underscore access underscore token, and then we're going to paste the Polar access token in there. So we've got that in our environment variables. And let's go back to Cursor. Okay, so now we have added the access token to Convex as an environment variable. It's gone through and made those changes. It says the final setup step here is to add your Polar access token. So we've done that. And then once you have added the access token, make sure you have an active subscription. The user must have a Polar customer ID stored from the previous checkout. So we'll just check we've got that. So chris7@test.com. Let's go over to Convex, have a look in our data in our subscriptions table, and let's see chris7@test.com. We have a subscription ID here, so that is perfect. So it should now show a loading spinner briefly, then open a new tab with your Polar customer portal pre-authenticated. If you get an error like no subscription found, it means that the user doesn't have a Polar customer ID. They may need to complete a checkout first for the webhook to populate the field. Let's refresh this and see if it works. So let's go manage subscription here. Unable to open subscription portal, please try again. Let's try and figure out what's going on here. So here we go. We've got this error. Let's give this back to Cursor and see if we can get this fixed. We're going in the right direction here though. So I've just said here, we get this error when clicking the manage subscription link. Help me identify why this is happening and fix the issue. So error opening customer portal, type error failed to fetch at handle manage subscription. So this is a cause error. The browser is blocking the request because the Convex HTTP endpoint doesn't have the proper cause headers to allow requests from your front end. Let me fix this. The endpoint needs cause headers to allow cross-origin requests from your front end. So it's going through and fixing that issue for us now. So this is now saying that once the deployment updates, which it automatically does here, this is going to work. Hopefully, it says that this should work. So let's try clicking this again. There we go. We've gone through to our own customer portal for this product here. We can go back. This takes us to our dashboard. So now everything is set up and working. We've added our customer portal to our application. And next, we're going to add a couple of features here to get it working the way we want, and then go through the last few steps here to get it live and actually deploy it. So now we've got our database hooked up. We've got login and sign up working, and we've got payments ready with Polar, and we've added the customer payments portal in here as well. The next thing we're going to do before we start building features in our app is we're going to do some UI design here. So we're going to actually design this app to look the way that we want it to look. It does look pretty decent already, but what I want to do is get this looking really, really professional before we actually go and build some features here. And it's good to do this in advance sometimes, because this is going to basically apply the design layer across the basic version of our app that we've got here. And then once we've got all this kind of foundation of database authentication, payments, and the design layer applied here, we're going to be able to build features on top of this much, much faster than kind of adding that stuff in or trying to do it later. So what we're going to do here before we actually go into doing any design is we're going to find some sort of design reference that we're going to use, and then we're going to extract the style. And the two places that I like to use for design references are Dribble, so mobble.com, or Mobbin is also a really good place for design reference as well, when you can get app and kind of website design references from real apps. Dribble is a bit more concept kind of driven, but I've found this screenshot that I like here, this kind of design where it's got these kind of like faux 3D elements here, as well as like just a very kind of professional looking UI, and it's nice and clean, and the editor feels like pretty slick as well. So what I'm going to do is we're going to copy the image that we like, and then in Cursor, actually before we do any more in Cursor, what I'm going to do is just make a commit here to Git, so that we basically make a version with all of these changes. And so let's add in here like added payments and customer portal, and then do our commits here, save all and commit changes. So there we go, we've added that commit to our Git repository for this project. Now let's go back to the agents view here, and what we're going to do is we're going to create this design style that we can work from in our app. So we're going to start a new agent here, and we're going to change the model to Gemini 3 Pro, which is the best one for kind of visual context and UI design. So I'd almost treat each of these different models as different types of person on your product team, on your app team. So Gemini 3 Pro would be your UI designer, your user experience designer, basically. So let's paste in the screenshot that we've got here, and rather than actually doing anything here to our app, first what I want to do is to get it to extract the design styles from this image, and then create a style guide file in our planning folder that we created in our project here. So we've got planning, we've got our features.md file, which is basically that list of features that we wrote down that we want to add to our project. Now we're going to add like a style guide markdown file here to kind of give an outline of what our design style is going to be for this project. So what I've said here is let's extract the high-level style guidelines and direction from the attached screenshot as if you were a creative director for a software company. Add these guidelines in JSON to a file in the planning folder called designguidelines.json. I also want to include this in this style guide, a display serif font from Google Fonts that we can use as the heading font, and a modern sans serif font we can use for the rest of the copy. Make sure to cover all major UI components that we would need for a software application. So this is going to create our like design guidelines file basically before we actually apply any design changes here. And so let's get Gemini to extract these design guidelines into this file, and then we'll be able to see what they look like when applied to our app. We're actually going to create a temporary page to view all of these components before we apply the design across our entire app, so that we actually don't have to change any code in our app here that's working correctly before we apply this design style. So now the design styles have been extracted here, so we can have a look at this file basically that it's created and just check that this is all good. So a soft, modern and airy design system focused on focus, clarity and gentle depth, high border radius, soft diffuse shadows, high contrast, clean typography, subtle interaction states. So we've got Francis as the heading font, and we've got Inter as the body font. I'm happy with Inter as the body font here. And then let's have a look at Francis from Google Fonts just to see what it looks like. I quite like this. Maybe we want to use light. Let's see what it looks like with this. I think this is pretty interesting that it's selected this font here. It might use a heavier style than what we want. It's got 300, 400 and 600. So color palette here as well, and shadows, border radius. Here are the components. This is just outlining it at a high level, so it doesn't go into massive depth here. What we're going to do is we're going to create our components, and then we're going to create a design system, and then we're going to apply the design system across the entire app rather than just applying these basic rules here. So what we're going to do next, now that we've got these guidelines, and let's create a static page in this project with every UI component we might need in our application, following the design guidelines here, just to create styling only for this page and don't apply to any other area of our app. So this is going to create basically a visual design system for our application, so that we can like make any tweaks or changes to it, and then we'll create basically a full design system guide from that we can then apply to our app. And we can try this a couple of different times as well to make sure that we're getting the right design that we want. So that is going to be basically like all of the components that we might need for our app, and that's going to be a visual way of seeing what these look like. So next what we're going to do here is we're going to add a link just onto this page, just so that we can access this style guide that we've created. So let's just ask Cursor to add a link in the footer to the style guide page so I can access the style. And then let's add the style guide page that we created. So we always want to and add context for like the exact thing that we're referring to if we can whenever you're working with cursor. So just a good thing to do here. We might want to change this to Sonnet 4.5 just for that change. We don't need Gemini 3 Pro here. So let's just change that to Sonnet 4.5 for this. And this is something that you can do with cursor as you're working with it, just to kind of change models as you're going through the chat. So you don't always need to stick on the same AI model for your agent. So that's added a link to the style guide. We can see that here. If we just click on that style guide, that is taking us to a page with all of our components. We can see the design language that we have built here for our application. So we've got, this is the text, that's the highlighted text. I think that looks really clear. We've got colors here as well. I want to change this gray color. I like this title here as well. And I like the secondary font that we've got here. We're going to add our logo in. This background, I want to make it a little bit warmer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Gemini 3 Pro. I'm actually just going to make some changes to this style guide page that we've got here. We've got some loading spinners, some hover states here, drop downs, rich text controls. There's really nice primary action and some other buttons and stuff here, as well as the different typography styles. So let's say what I want to change here is primarily just to change that background color to make it a little bit warmer. On the style guide page, let's make the background and toolbar colors a little bit warmer. So let's just submit this and get it to change that. So what we want to do now as we're designing our UI is basically to make any tweaks here that we want to our style guide. And then once we've done that, we're going to create a style guide JSON file, which is going to have all of the details of this style guide. And that is going to be the thing that we use across the entire app. So you can see this is a very subtle change here. It's made this slightly warmer for the toolbar and for our background color here, which I think is working really well. This accent color, I might want to change to something a little bit more. Let's add a little bit of purple into it. We're just going to do like a bluey purple. We're going to tease that kind of AI style here a little bit. We're not going to go full AI style though. No purple gradients here. So let's change the accent color on the style guide to a slightly more purple blue color. So we're just going to go through, do these little tweaks and changes as we go, just to update the UI. So there we go. We've got this accent color here. I like that. I think that works really well. And then one other thing I want to do here is just to make the font weight a little bit less heavy on some of these elements. So I want to actually change just the heading. Let's make the headings slightly lighter. So at style guide, I'm going to do, let's make the heading styles a slightly lighter weight, and just keep doing these small tweaks until you get it exactly how you want in the UI. One thing I'm also going to add into this style guide page is some shadow depths. Let's add 3 different shadow depths to this page as well. Small, medium, and large. That can be used across multiple UI elements. So now we've added these shadow styles to this page here. So you can see we've got small, medium, and large shadows here. So I think we're pretty good for our style guide. And this is a page that we can continue to add to as we evolve our app as well, to keep our styles consistent throughout our app. Let's keep all of this. I'm just going to go back to the homepage here just to check this. So it hasn't updated anything on the homepage. So now we're going to keep all of these changes. So I'm just going to click keep all on this agent. We're going to start a new agent. This is also going to be Gemini 3 Pro. And what we're going to do here is we're going to maybe do this a couple of times and see what the output looks like in our app. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Gemini 3 Pro to apply the design changes from the style guide page across the rest of our application. So we're just going to say here, use style guide as a reference for the UI styles for this app and apply the design style from this page across the entire UI for our application, following the components and styles on this page. I've probably said that too many times, but let's send this off. I just want to be clear that it's just using the components from that page and just using the styles from that page. So it's basically going to reference this style guide page, and then it's going to apply those changes across all the rest of our pages as well. And you can see here, it's broken down all of the individual pages here in a to-do list. So it's going to work through all of these, and it's moving all of the styles from the CSS from the style guide page to the styles for the entire application. So Cursor has now applied all of these these UI styles across our app. You can see the changes here. I'm actually not happy with a couple of things here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update some of these components to kind of just tweak them a little bit more, and also change some of the colors and the styling that we've got from the style guide that we've got here. Let's go back to this page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update some of these bars and these buttons and these kind of control UI elements to give them a little bit more depth. I'm also going to update this heading font. So let's make some changes here now that it's gone through and applied the changes to the entirety of our app. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to prompt these changes one by one, do small little changes and check it as we go to make sure that it's looking good and that I like those changes. And then in a few prompts, we're going to get to something that we can move forwards with here that I'm happy with. What I'm going to do first for the button styles is I've actually found this style here that I really like. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this image, go back to cursor, paste this into cursor and say, let's update the buttons and command bar on the style guide page to use a pseudo 3D style button effect in the same as this screenshot. Add a subtle animated hover state to these components as well. And I'm going to do this just on the style guide page to start off with, because I want to get this right and then apply it across the rest of our app. So you can see here now that we've got this button effect here, this kind of faux 3D kind of button effect, which is looking super nice. This is what we're going to do now is we're going to go and apply this style across the rest of our app. So it actually says here, apply 3D styles to the landing page buttons. We could have been specific that we didn't want it to make any other changes in any of the files. So do make sure you're being specific if you want to limit it to just the style guide. But working in this way will kind of help you do the styles first in your style guide, keep track of all of the styles in your app, and then apply them directly to your app as you're kind of working and building components. And this page here with all of your components on will grow as your app grows as well. So now we've got our updated 3D button style here. What we are going to do is we're going to apply that throughout the app. So let's apply this style to every single button in our app so that we get this consistent. So now we've applied the button styles throughout our app. You can see here that they've all been updated to this kind of faux 3D kind of button style. What I'm going to do is make a couple changes here. So I was having a look at design inspiration whilst cursor was working. I actually think Manus is a really good example here of what we can do just to keep this website super clean. Use a font that is more like this font here from Manus. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Google Fonts, and instead of this one that we're using here, I'm just going to search to find one that kind of matches. We're going to open the filters. I'm going to go to serif. We're going to go to modern, maybe transitional, and let's just type in the inkwell here. Actually, let's type in this heading, right with knowledge, and then let's just see what it looks like. We're going to make this a little bit bigger so that we can get a sense of what that looks like as a heading. And we're going to pick one that kind of matches what Manus have got. So this one here, Libre of Baskerville, is quite good. That's fairly similar. I think that would work very well. So let's have a look at some other options here. We could also go with any of these. Maybe Newsreader is quite nice. Or maybe this one. No, let's go with the first option that we were going to go for here. Let's go for Libre Baskerville. And let's use that as our heading font. So what we're going to do here, what I want to highlight to you now in cursor is that you can see this little circle icon in the chat. That is your context for the changes that you're making with your AI agent. So once you start to get higher up into this larger percentage of context, it means it's sending all of the previous chat information through with the request when you make that request. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep all on this because I'm happy with this button that it's applied. Let's do keep all, and then we're going to start a new agent so that we're starting from fresh context here. And what we're going to do is we're going to update the heading font. We're just going to say, let's update the heading font across the app and on style guide to Libre Baskerville from Google Fonts. Apply this throughout the application. One other thing that you can do here when you're making design changes is you can also add a phrase like don't make any functional changes. Now the models should have good enough context to know that they shouldn't make any functional changes to your app. Another thing that you can do is add specific cursor rules for this. So we could add specific rules that we can reference. If I go to the settings here and we go to rules, memories and commands, what we could add is a project rule here, which would basically be like a design rule, which would say only focus on front end changes. don't change any functionality. So let's just do design for this rule. And this is just in Markdown, so you can just add like heading styles like you would in any Markdown file. I'm just going to call this general guidelines. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add some bullet points here and say only make front end visual changes, never change any app functionality. And we can basically save that. Now, this is not a great rules file, but what we're doing is basically creating rules specific to the task that we're doing. So that already looks better with that font there applied throughout. Much better. Okay, I actually really don't like this purple that we've used here as well, so we're going to make that change as well. Now that we've applied that to the style guide as well, so we can see here it's updated this here. We're going to change this purple to a different accent color. We're also going to update the logo. I've added a logo file into this project here. If I go back to the editor view, go into src and go into assets, go into public, you can see any image files in here. So you can see the SVG that was generated when the project was created. I've also added in a logo.png image here, which we're going to use to replace the logo. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click keep all and do each of these agent chats to preserve context just on one specific task. So let's do a new agent and say, let's update the logo throughout the app to @ and then we're going to do logo.png. And you can see here it's a little cartoonish kind of pencil with a little face on it. And let's submit that. And we can also get agents running in parallel for these smaller changes as well. So I'm actually going to create a new agent whilst we're doing this to get this running in parallel and say, let's remove the purple color from the main heading on the landing page. And we're going to add the landing page in here as well. So let's submit that off. So now we've got these two going. This is squished the logo here. So this is still working. So remove the purple color from the main heading in landing.tsx. Let's remove that. That is much better. I also think it should be on one line. So let's make the heading on the landing page on one line. And then we can also add like the design rules in our cursor rules if you do add design as well. And so you can basically kind of like follow those design rules if you want to add the design rules in there as well. Because we're doing these small individual changes, it's easy enough to undo it if it does do anything that kind of breaks, and you can see the code changes that it's making as it's working anyway. This is applying this icon still. There we go. We've got write with knowledge here. This is a much better font. I want to tighten up the letter spacing on the headings. So let's add a follow-up in here as well. So I like that. So let's say let's tighten up the letter spacing on all headings. We've updated the app here, but what we're going to do is say like this is squished, and also it does not changed in the footer. The logo is squashed. Make sure to retain the original ratio of the image and also update the image in the footer as well. And I would only recommend doing this kind of multi-agent approach is when you're making smaller changes where the individual changes don't affect each other or aren't going to conflict with each other. That's where you can really do this. We've now tightened up the letter spacing here, which is looking a lot better. It's a very small change, but I think it makes a difference. And we are just finishing up updating the icon here. And then I think we're good to go. We're good to move past this design step. One thing I'm actually going to do whilst this is working is just to do a small change to the logo text, because I want to use a really specific font for this. I already have it in mind. So I'm going to say here in the navigation, change the Inkwell logo font to instrument serif from Google fonts in italic. Let's submit that as well. That has fixed the logo and also applied it in the footer. I think we can make it a little bit bigger than that, to be fair. So let's make the app logo a little bit bigger. Increase logo size by 25%. And when you're doing these smaller changes, because it already has the context of the previous conversation here, we can use smaller phrases like this because it's referencing the previous conversation. So it knows what we mean when we say logo here. We're also changing this font here. We've removed the purple color. That's already done. We're going to keep that as the accent color for now. I think we can remove that or change that across the board later. For now, I'm going to keep that. That's increased the size of the logo there. That's perfect. And probably in the footer as well. This is starting to look like a real application now, with a logo, with a brand. And when we get this font changed for Inkwell at the top here, I think it's going to look even better. And there we go. We've updated the font for the logo at the top here, which is looking good. So let's keep all of those changes, and we've updated the app logo. So let's keep all of those changes from that chat as well. And now we have completed our design. We've created a design system page in our app. We're going to remove that link from the footer before we actually deploy this later. And now we've got a really good looking app here. So let's go on to the next step, which is building some more features. So let's add some features here to our app now that we have done the design changes. As always, I've committed these changes to my repository. So you can see here, I added design system and styling. I just added the message and then clicked commit, and that has committed that to our Git repository. And now we're going to add a new agent, and we're going to go through building features. And for this, I'm going to change it back over to Opus 4.5 so we can get the best possible output for building our features. We're going to go to our features.md file and look at the ideas for features that we added here. Change the delete pop-up so that it uses the app UI rather than the native UI. So we're going to go in and do that change. So let's sign in. We're going to sign into our account. We did test.com. Let's go through into our app with these nice new buttons here. This is the same button. The hover effect is a little bit broken there. We've got our drop down at the top here, new document. So what we're going to do is if I create a document, here's our document editor with the knowledge on the left and the AI assistant on the right hand side. I also want to make those panels collapsible. So let's do that first. Let's actually make these panels collapsible. So I just have the document editor in the middle. We've got our new agent here. So let's add this prompt. And the way that we should build features is to build them one at a time, test that they work, and then basically decide whether you want to keep or undo that code that you've just added. And the prompt framework that we're going to use here is simply made up of 5 separate parts. First, we're going to add some context about what we want to build and why we want to add that feature. Second, we're going to add the user journey that the user would go through when they're using that feature. Third, we're going to add any technical requirements that we need the AI to know about, what APIs we want to use, what technology we want to use for the feature. Fourth, we're going to add in any design direction that we're going to need to add or that we want to add. And then fifth, we're going to add in any negative prompt basically to say what we don't want the AI to do. So in this prompt box here, we're simply going to say in the document editor, I want the user to be able to hide and show the left hand, knowledge, and AI assistant panels. So that's the context. Add smooth animation for when they are hidden and shown. And then we're going to explain the user journey here. And we're simply going to say add icons that allow the user to toggle the panels to show or hide them. So that's pretty simple user journey. We're just showing and hiding those panels. Any technical considerations that we need, that we don't actually need anything here to add into this prompt. Any design direction we've already added with this animation part here. And then anything that we don't want the AI to be able to actually touch here as well. I think we're just going to leave this for now and just go with this prompt. We can keep it pretty simple, and we can even tag the document editor page here as well to add a bit of context, which I would always recommend if you can, to add the specific context of the page that you want to edit. So it turns out that we already had these buttons here in the top right hand corner, which we can use to close, to hide and show those panels already. So we've got those, and then the animation is pretty smooth there as well. So that is good that that's been added. Now let's go back to our features document here, change the delete pop-up. I'm just going to click keep all because I'm happy with that feature that we just added. Now we're going to fix this delete pop-up here. So let's write a prompt for this in the same format as we wrote before. So I said, let's update the delete document pop-up so that it uses the app UI rather than the browser UI. This should look and feel like part of the app experience. When the user clicks a trash icon, show this pop-up. Apply this change to any other delete actions in the app as well. Let's send that off. Whilst that's working, let's go back to our features list as well. So we've got bullet points aren't visible in the document. So let's go in and just test this again. So we've got that there. If I do... yeah, so bullet points still aren't visible in this document. So because that is touching a different part of the app, I'm actually going to do a new agent here in parallel. And let's add this prompt in here for this as well. So we're going to add the document editor page. I'm going to say bullet points on the document aren't visible. Make sure they use the same color as the text so that they are visible in the document editor. And let's send that to Opus. Let's go back to our delete pop-up here. So that is basically, it needs to create a custom confirmation modal and update all 3 locations. So it's found 3 locations where this delete pop-up, or where this pop-up exists, and it's saying that it can add them to there. So that is good. And then the CSS styles for the TipTap editor don't specify color for the list markers, so that's adding that in there as well. So let's see what these come back with. So it is saying that it has updated the CSS here so that the markers are visible, but let's actually see if they're still not visible. If I write something here, they're still not visible, so there might be some other issue going on here. We've also got this delete pop-up is all still working away. Let's go back to our features, have a look at our features and keep working through these. We could close a lot of these files, to be fair. Add account management in the app, we've done that. Allow the user to highlight text and add it to the AI chat context. Okay, this is going to be a bigger change, so I'm just gonna keep this change for the bullets because I don't think that's done anything bad. It's just added CSS there that might work. We're going to do a new agent here. We're going to say, and this is a good example of this prompt structure that we're using here for these features. So in the document editor, I want the user to be able to select text on the document and add that to the AI assistant as context. That is our context that we're giving the AI model here to build this feature. Then we say the user would highlight the text on the document and then click a plus icon that would show next to that text and add it to the chat context. This would add a card above the chat text field in the AI assistant showing the first 2 words of the text that was added truncated to save space. And then when the user sent a message using the AI assistant, the text added as context would be sent as well. So that way we're adding some text from our document, we're adding it to our AI assistant, and then we're able to ask questions about it or get the AI to kind of rewrite that in different ways, basically. So this is an example of adding context and then user journey here. And then we don't need any technical information here or design direction or negative prompts because Opus should be able to see that we're using the OpenAI API in the code base here. We could specify that if we wanted to. Let's send that off. And the reason that we can send this off in parallel with this other one here as well is because they're working on different parts of the code base. So this is actually rerunning our front end here to get this up and running. Maybe that is because it is affecting the kind of browser UI. I'm not 100% sure there. So now if we have a look at this, we've now got an inline UI in our app here. It keeps on navigating to this other port that I've got open. So let's stop doing that. So if we now open our dashboard, we'll go to click delete, and then we have this delete document pop-up that we have here. This pop-up is something that we could add to the style guide page as well if we wanted to, but that's now no longer in the browser UI, which is great. Let's go back to this other AI chat here that's working. So this is basically, I need to add text selection detection in the editor with a floating plus button. Pass selected text context from editor to the document editor to the AI chat. Display the context cards in the AI chat. Include the context when sending messages. So that's what that's adding here. I think Opus 4.5 is just testing that this delete document pop-up actually worked, and that is working correctly. It's taking screenshots and going through a few testing steps here. And this is also planning our next move. So let's wait for both of these to finish up. So Opus 4.5 has completed this pop-up here. So we can test that that works and that's working correctly. So let's keep that and then let's wait for this AI context here to the AI. So you can see in the chat here that cursor keeps trying to navigate to 5173 when we're actually using port 5175. So what we can do for this to try and get it to stop navigating to this is actually go to the README and update the README in our files to just say that it uses 5175 as the port here instead. And that should navigate to the correct environment whenever cursor tries to do any testing here. So let's see if this works. So it now says user highlights text in the document, a plus button appears, clicking the plus adds it to context. The cards show truncated text. Users can remove individual snippets or clear all. When sending a message, all context snippets are included in the prompt to AI. So let's go into our document in our app. Let's write something here. So let's ask the AI to write something with us. So let's say, let's explain vibe coding to me in 2 sentences. So let's send that to our AI assistant. Okay, we've got this insert into document. So let's insert that into our document. Now we should be able to highlight something here, and we've got this plus. It adds that to the context there. So let's say, what does this text say? Just to test that this works, and it should respond. The selected text emphasizing the underlying indicates a focus on deeper, often unspoken feelings. Oh, I just meant what does it say literally, but that's deep. And we can insert that into the document or not. There's already like a bunch of features that I would like to add in here. One feature that I want to add in, and I think let's have a look at our features list here. So allow the user to add system instructions that guide the AI chat on the tone it should use or writing guidelines. So let's do that. And then I also want to do one other. Allow the user to select from pre-created tone system instructions that guide the AI on a specific tone of voice. So these are the features that we're going to add, and then we're going to move on to the next bit here. I'm happy with this add to chat context thing here, and we can remove that. We can do that with multiple bits here as well. So we can add those, and then we can clear all. Nice, that's really nice. Okay, so let's keep that. Let's create a new agent here. Let's keep it on Opus 4.5. So our prompt here is let's add a way for the user to add in system instructions for the AI assistant at a global level for the user account and at a document level for the specific document. This should just be a text field that the user can add instructions to and click save. This would guide the AI assistant in how it should respond to any message. Let's send that off here. We should have also maybe tagged in the document editor page there, although actually no, because it's not just on the document level, it's also at this level as well. So I want to add like your project or your account level system instructions, and then on a document level you can also add it on the document as well. So you can add like your brand tone of voice at the top level, and then you could add like specific instructions for any given document at like a lower level. This is nice. We've got like the heading styles here match our app as well. We might want to have like export or like save to Google Drive in here as well, or some sort of way of like exporting these. So one thing to mention here as well before we do this change is that I've also changed the rules here that we added earlier, the design rules, to basically only use them when you apply them manually. That means that we're going to be able to do more functional changes here as well. So because we're adding features here, basically, we don't want to just do front end changes. We want to make sure that these things actually work. So one thing I want to do here is also to test that this is changing this in our database. So this is just saved. It's called test document. So what I want to do whilst Opus 4.5 is working through this change is just to go back to Convex and just see that we've got a bunch of stuff happening in our project now. Let's go to data. We've got documents here, and I just want to see if this is saved, which it has. So it's saved this document, it saved it against this user ID at this time, which was the time that we created that document, which is great. So everything that we're building in our app is being saved in our database, which is good. So this is creating a plan to implement the feature. It's going to update document TS to handle document level AI instructions, and then system instructions in the prompt, add AI instructions section to profile page, add document level AI instructions UI in the document editor. Okay, let's see what this comes back with. And I could have added a bit more detail as to like where I wanted the icon to show, how I wanted the user journey to be here, but I kind of decided that I just was going to let the kind of AI go ahead and like decide where it wants to do this. And you can kind of decide like how much control you want to give the AI as you're building stuff here by including it or not including the detail in the prompt as you want. And as you get more and more complex with your app, you're going to want to also get more and more specific with the detail in the prompts that you're adding as well. So now the AI has finished building this feature. So we have global instructions. Users can set general writing and preferences in their profile that apply to all AI conversations across all documents. So if I go into my profile here, I can add in AI assistant instructions in here. Let's say mention lemons in every sentence. So what we're doing here is we just want to basically test that this actually works. And then if I go into our document, we can add AI instructions for this document as well. I'm actually going to do this in a pop-up. I don't think that's a great UI there. I like the icon at the top here, but I don't like the UI that it's added to drop down. We probably could have been clearer about that. One thing that we're going to do here is just to ask the AI assistant a question and then see if it mentions lemons in every sentence. So let's say, what is vibe coding in 2 sentences? And it should say lemons every sentence. It says vibe coding is a qualitative research method that, much like how the zest of a lemon enhances a dish by emphasizing the underlying feelings and attitudes akin to the savoring of a refreshing taste of lemons in a recipe. So our system prompts are working. That is great. We should also test them from here as well. But first, let's add a quick change in here for this one. So let's say from the document editor, let's change the system prompt adding to a pop-up rather than a UI that appears at the top of the page. When I click the instructions icon, show a pop-up that allows me to add my system instructions. So let's just move that system instructions to a pop-up instead. And I think we are getting somewhere here. The one last thing that I'm going to do before we finish up adding our features here is just to change the AI assistant to a character, to the same character as we're using for the logo here, called Inky. So we're going to do Inky, the AI assistant, to help you write, and that I think will add a little bit of character to this app as well. So that has now completed our pop-up here, and if I click this, it breaks, which is fun. So let's have a look at the console to see what's going on here. So add, we've got like this uncore error here. Let's see what is going on here. Let's see, an error occurred in this document editor. So let's just copy this and paste it back over. Let's fix this bug here. So we want to say clicking on the instructions button now causes this error. We're going to paste the error in, and then we're going to say, can you investigate and fix this issue? So that's the system instructions pop up on the document editor page works correctly. So it looks like it's just a naming conflict here. So it's going to be a simple issue to fix. The document variable from the convex query is shadowing the global document object. Let me rename it to doc. So that should fix that issue. Let's click on this. Now we get our AI instructions pop up here. Let's wait for this to actually finish building before we test it. I'm going to actually go back to Convex and have a look at what we've got in here. So we've got knowledge, which is like any knowledge that has been added to any documents. That was our knowledge. We've got documents in here. We've got AI instructions in user settings now. So that is a table that's been created. And in documents, we've got title created and AI instructions here as well. So we're creating all of the right things in our database. So that is good to check. And there's just one thing to know when you're going through, just to check things like databases and stuff, just to make sure that everything is being saved to your user account so that you can be confident that stuff is adding to your database correctly. So this has now added those changes. Let's test the pop-up here. Let's say mention oranges in every sentence. Let's save these instructions. Let's go back to Convex. Let's check. Mention oranges. So in this document, let's say like, explain to me again, and let's see if it says oranges. Certainly in this document, I'll provide explanations that incorporate references to both lemons and oranges in every sentence. Amazing. So both of our system instructions are now working here, and we tested previously adding the knowledge in here so that all of this context is being added to the AI assistant, and we can work on our document here with our AI assistant to help us write anything that we want, any document that we want. So that is going to be all of the features that we're going to add here to our application. Actually, we're going to do one more, which is changing the AI assistant to be called Inky. So let's do a new agent here. Let's go document editor. Let's say update the AI assistant to be called Inky. Simply replace the title AI assistant in the right hand panel with the name Inky and the Inkwell logo. We're going to do logo.png. And that is going to basically replace the AI assistant to be called Inky. And what we could do here, which I think would be really nice, but we're not going to do it in this video, but would be to create some animation. And there are some AI tools that you can do to do that really quickly. Just to do a little animation for our little Inky character here, so that he kind of waves like hello or does something every now and then. This is a bit like a kind of paperclip here. We should have added maintain the correct aspect ratio to this image when we added it in. So let's say the Inky logo image in the right hand panel is squished. Can you make sure to maintain the right aspect ratio of the image? One thing that we could also do here in Cursor, which would help this even further, is to use this select element in the top right, and we could have actually just selected that and added that to the chat as well. So that would have given the AI chat even more context there. It's fixed it anyway, so that's absolutely fine. Let's make it a little bit bigger as well. Let's make it like 50% bigger, and let's add that context from selecting that element in the browser there so that it knows what it's doing. There we go. On the right hand side, we've got Inky, we've got our knowledge, and we've got our system instructions on a profile level as well. So this is all working, and we've got our app up and running. I really like how we're going with this. And so let's finish up adding features here. And I'm going to take you through how to test this application and then how to deploy it so that you can start getting real paying customers. So now we are happy with our app. We've got everything hooked up. We've done our design. We've added some new features. And now before we actually deploy anything here, we're going to have to do a few things. And first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a full test test on our entire app's code base. And this is a step that loads of people actually miss, and it's really, really good to do. I'm going to do this using a tool called TestSprite. You can do this with a tool called CodeRabbit as well. CodeRabbit and TestSprite are really the two biggest ones to do here. Just go to testsprite.com or CodeRabbit and create a new account. And then we're going to set up basically an MCP, which if you don't know what an MCP is, an MCP is basically Model Context Protocol. You don't need to know what it means, but it's a way of us using specific tools like TestSprite and like CodeRabbit inside of Cursor. We can just call that tool and ask Cursor to use it for us in our code. So once you've created a TestSprite or a CodeRabbit account, it's going to guide you through how to set that up on those platforms. For TestSprite, you can click test locally here. I've done a previous test here on another app. You can kind of see what this does. It creates all of the tests that you need in your application for the front end and the back end, and it goes through and tests those fully for you. So you just click quick install, and then you can basically click add to Cursor that we're using Cursor, install the MCP here. You also need to create an API key for TestSprite as well, which I've already done. I've got one here. I'll create a new one just for Inkwell so that we can use that. And you're going to want to copy this to your clipboard and then add that in to the MCP settings in Cursor. If I go back to this, we just click add to Cursor, and that is going to take us into the Cursor settings here to the tools and MCP section, and it's going to add TestSprite. We've got an error here actually on TestSprite, so I'm going to try turning that off and turning that on again so that that can load the tools. There, it's enabled those tools. Some of these other ones have errors, but once that's added, it's going to add all these TestSprite tools here to the MCP section in Cursor. You can click edit here, and that will take you to this MCP.json file. And what you're going to need to do is you'll need to paste your API key into this part here in this TestSprite rule. So I'm going to delete that API key and I'm just going to paste this new one in here, and then that will add the TestSprite MCP to Cursor so that you can use it. Once we've done that, we're going to go back over to TestSprite. All we have to do is say help me test this project with TestSprite. We're going to have to create a few settings in TestSprite first as we go through this, but all we do is come back to Cursor. So I'm going to go back to my app here and I'm going to create a new agent, and then I'm just going to paste that command, help me test this project with TestSprite, and that will call the TestSprite MCP inside of Cursor, and it will guide us through testing the entire project for us. And we can test the front end or the back end. It might ask us a few questions here, but basically this is going to run the TestSprite tool to actually do that. It's figured out what the tech stack is. So this is a front end project built with Vite, Convex, TipTap, and Tailwind. Do we want to run the MCP tool? Convex is the back end as well, so we don't have, that's like on the Convex side, so we don't have to worry. So we're just going to run this on the front end first. We're going to say run, and that will run TestSprite for us, and that's going to open up a configuration page where we can choose what we want to test, whether we want to test the back end or the front end. We're going to do the full code base as the scope, the test account username. So we're going to use our test account that we added to our app. This is what it's going to use in a virtual browser to go through and actually test your application as if it was that user. Then we're going to add in the password for this user here as well. And then we're going to choose the port that our app is on, which is 5175. We don't have to add a path here. We're just adding the development port. And then we can add a product specification doc, upload a document that explains your desired product's features, purpose, and how it should work. And what we're going to do here, because this is required, is we're going to go back to Cursor. We're going to create a new agent, and we're just going to say, create a PRD for this entire app. Store this in a file called prd.md in the planning folder. So this is going to basically read our entire code base and create a PRD for this application based on the features that we've built and everything that we've added in here. So it's exploring the code base, and then that's going to create a file for us. If we go back to editor, inside of this planning folder that we created, which has all of our planning in, so our design guidelines and our features file that we're adding our kind of to-do list on, it's going to create a file in there which has the PRD, and then we can download that and then add that into TestSprite here, basically to give it context of the app, the technology it uses, what the features are, how they work, all of that sort of stuff, so that TestSprite will know exactly what it needs to test. So Cursor has created a PRD for us called prd.md, and if we go over to our editor, have a look at prd.md, this has basically just created a full document which is a PRD for this app, even with like diagrams and stuff for like what the architecture looks like. And we're going to basically add this file to TestSprite so that it knows exactly what it needs to test. We'll go back to the agents view here, click keep all so that we can keep that PRD. We'll go to the editor, right click on prd.md and do reveal in Finder. And then I'm just going to drag and drop that PRD into the TestSprite setup here so that we've got our product specification doc. And then we click continue, upload success, the page will close automatically. So that closes, we go back to cursor. And if we go back to our agents view here and go to help with testing the project using TestSprite, this is now asking us to run the TestSprite MCP here. And this is going to go through and write all the tests for this entire app and then test it for us. And it's going to give us an idea of if anything is broken, if we need to fix anything, and if everything is secure in our app before we actually launch it to a real domain and get people using this app and paying for it. So TestSprite has finished running a test on our application, and there is a bunch of stuff that has failed here, and that is okay. Don't worry too much about this, but what this is highlighting is that you need to run these tests on your applications as you're building them, because there is going to be a bunch of stuff that fails. Now we've built this pretty quickly in just like a couple of hours, a few hours here, so we're not going to have covered everything in every edge case, and we haven't thought properly about 100% of this stuff. And so this is really good to be able to see this test report, and we can go to this test report file here. So let's click on the test report. Let's keep all of these changes because we want to keep this report so we can see what we need to fix. And then we're going to go through and we're going to make these fixes as we've got written down in this test report here. So overall health needs attention. The application demonstrates solid core functionality with authentication, document creation, AI chat, and profile management working. However, several critical issues were identified around subscription enforcement, autosave reliability, and document access that require immediate attention. Okay, so perfect. So requirement, user authentication, all the sign up stuff is working correctly. That's great. Route protection and security. So this is where we've got some issues. So route protection for user without active subscription, which has failed. So that means a user without an active subscription would be able to access the app if they found a way around it, basically. What happens here, user without an active subscription was able to access subscription protected pages, including the document editor, without being redirected to subscription or trial pages. So subscription access control is not being enforced properly. Users without active subscriptions can access protected features. This represents a business critical issue that could lead to revenue loss. So what we're going to do is we basically go through this document and we apply any of these fixes, and we can go back and test it manually ourselves. So I'm going to log out here. Let's sign out and let's see if we can go and create an account. Let's see if we can create an account, and then let's see if we can access without paying for our subscription. So let's create an account. This will take us in here. So unlock your writing potential. I'm going to say log out, and let's just sign in to this account. And I think this is going to be where we're going to come up against this issue. So we've logged back in and we've logged around. We've got this message here. So I'm not sure how the user is actually able to get around this in the app, but they must be able to somehow. So review the subscription gate component in app.tsx and subscription status query logic. Ensure the has access check is properly evaluating subscription status. So let's just copy this, and we can literally put this into an agent here and say, we'll basically copy these two things here. So there is a bug we need to fix in the app. This subscription access control is not being properly enforced. And then we're going to paste the recommendation here into Opus, and we're going to send this off to Opus. And this is in app.tsx. So we mention app.tsx here actually, so that's completely fine. So let's send this here to Opus. Let's have a look at the rest of the fails as well here. So unable to test access restrictions for user due to missing sign out functionality. We do have sign out functionality. So if I log in, let's go to log out and then sign into the one that we do have access with. Let's sign in here. So we have sign out functionality here, which maybe it just couldn't find. So I'm not too worried about that test. Test could not complete because there's no visible sign out button in the UI. Document operations for user A worked correctly. Add visible sign out option. We've already got that. So that has passed really. Delete document with confirmation modal failed. So confirmation modal appeared for previous documents, did not appear after clicking delete on the last document. Intermittent issue with delete confirmation modal. So let's have a look here. Let's sign into an account here and let's do delete and let's click delete. So that has deleted that document successfully. Create another document, test 1, and then let's create test 2. So what we want to go through here is basically test all of these things manually. That TestSprite has pulled back. And part of the issue here might just be that it wasn't able to fully test this application. So we can just double check this and double check in Convex that this is basically creating these documents. So we've got a document here. This is for a different user. This is not for the one that we're logged in with. So if I create a new document here, we can go back to, we've created that document, and then let's delete this document, and then let's see in Convex if it's deleted, and then that's deleted in Convex. So that's working correctly. Opus is still working away. We've got autosave functionality in document editor. After editing and waiting for autosave, changes were not persisted after reloaded. Document reverted to original context. So let's double check that this is working. So let's go here. We're going to say hello. It says saved just now. Let's refresh this. And we've got hello. Let's do hello world. That's just saved. Let's refresh this. Hello world. That seems to be working just fine. We can feel confident that that is working. And let's just double check that it's saving in the database. So we've got hello world in this document. If we go back to our database, you can see hello world is in there. If I remove that word and then let that update and then go back to Convex, we can say that that's updated there as well. So that's working fine. And we have got here, what else have we got? So document editor, TipTap rich text editor features failed. Document was not found or accessible, preventing verification of formatting. This failure is related to document access, not the editor itself. Document may have been deleted or there's a navigation issue. This is just related to a test environment, so we don't have to worry about that because you can access the document editor. Document not found error in this. Server error when trying to generate AI text. The knowledge items operation failed due to a document not found error in the AI module. This suggests a race condition or stale document reference. Review error handling in this file and ensure document existence is validated before AI operations. I'm going to put this back into a new agent here as well. Add, view, expand, and delete knowledge items. So we actually didn't test this fully, adding the knowledge items here. So let's just add something into the knowledge here, and then let's ask the AI, what do we like? And it's going to say we like lemons, hopefully. We like lemons. There we go. They add a zesty flavor to our drinks and dishes. Lovely. So that seems to be working correctly. So maybe, I'm not sure what the issue is there. So let's see what Opus has done here for this previous bug. So subscription, the access check uses a truthy, falsy evaluation, which could have edge cases. The check should explicitly verify that has access is the Boolean true, not just any truthy value. The current logic. So see the same check pattern used in other pages too. So here's what it's fixed. To modify these files, why this matters. So using this ensures that the exact Boolean true grants access. Defense in depth against potential backend changes or data issues. Now users without valid access will always be redirected to the trial page. Okay, perfect. It was a very small number of changes in the code. And that's the thing here. We're just picking up on these small little changes that we need to do to fix these issues. Let's see what's going on here. So it seems that document not found error in Convex AI.ts. Knowledge item operations failed due to a document not found error in the AI module. This suggests a race condition or stale document reference. Review error handling to ensure document existence is validated before AI operations. I think this is fine. So I think if we remove this, delete knowledge, yes, and then we'll say hello, and it will still reply to us without the context of that knowledge. Just like a fresh lemon adds zest to a dish, I'm here to add a little flavor to your rising. So we've still got the system instructions of lemons in our profile. Inky loves lemons. That can be a quote. So it all seems to be working correctly. Let's go back to this. So I'm actually not going to worry about that one. Let's see any other tests here that passed or failed. So these all passed. UI responsiveness and accessibility checked, failed. Landing page render correctly across sizes, but keyboard accessibility and ARIA roles were not fully verified. Other pages not tested. So conduct manual accessibility audit. Consider adding automated accessibility testing tools like AxeCore. Okay, so we're not going to worry about that one either. So we've gone through and we've reviewed the code for our app. We've tested our app and made sure that it all works. We've fixed an issue around the subscription checking, which is really, really super important to make sure that we've got all these things working correctly. And now we're going to go on to deployment and breaking down exactly what we need to do to get this ready to actually deploy to a live environment. So now we've tested our app. Let's go back to the editor view and just commit these changes. So let's say tested full app and then commit that. And then we're going to go back to our agents view. And what we're going to do here is just create a new agent and basically just ask, what do we need to do to get this app live, is there anything that we need to do here before we actually deploy this? We're going to deploy it using Vercel. The backend is hosted by Convex, so we don't have to worry about deploying our backend because that's going to all be on Convex. But our front end, we want to deploy it, and so we need to deploy that somehow. And to deploy that, we're going to have to change a few things in our project. We're going to have to update our Convex environment to use a production environment instead of a development environment. And this means we're going to have to change some details in our project. And we're also going to want to update our Polar to our actual Polar account and not the sandbox. So those are the two main things that we want to do. But I also want to just ask the agent here to see, is there anything else that we need to do here before we actually push it live? Chances are there's probably a few other things that I'm forgetting here as well. And you can always ask AI before you do anything if you're unsure, just to break it down for you. So let's just ask AI. So I just said before I deploy this app, I need to change the Convex environment to production and update my Polar settings to use my real account instead of the sandbox. I'm deploying with Vercel. Break down how to do these changes for me step by step, and if there's anything else I need to do before deploying this app. So this is going to basically give us a plan for us to do. We should have put this in ask mode, to be honest. We could have put this in ask mode here. This is going to prepare your app for production deployment. Let me first explore your code base to understand the current configuration and provide accurate steps. So this is going to give us step-by-step instructions of how to actually get this live. Whilst this is running through and giving us a plan, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Vercel, which is what we're going to use to actually deploy this application live. I have one deployment here, which is just a test. And if you don't have an account with Vercel, just create an account with Vercel. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a domain. So we're going to buy a domain for this project. So I'm just going to search for Inkwell and see what we've got here. Or Inkwell app, inkwellapp.io, inkwellapp.app. Could we do getinkwell.app? Getinkwell.app. Okay, perfect. So let's add that. Let's buy our domain. So now we've bought our app in Vercel. That is all ready to go. One thing we are going to need to do in our project in Cursor is actually push all of this code to GitHub. So you remember at the beginning when we started this project, we basically created a repository in GitHub for this app, which is all of the code for this application, but we haven't pushed any updates to this yet. We haven't pushed any updates yet since 5 days ago, which is when I started recording this video. I've been doing it in little bits here and there to kind of go through the full journey. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to push this to GitHub once we've made all of the changes to our code base, and then we're going to connect GitHub to Vercel, and we're going to deploy our app using Vercel from our GitHub repository. And it's pretty straightforward. It's really easy to do this. I'm just going to show you how to do it. So here's what we have to do. It's given us a full breakdown here of exactly what we have to do. Number one, set up Convex production deployment. So let's create a production Convex deployment. So we can go to, basically we do npx convex deploy here. This will prompt you to select a production deployment, deploy your Convex function to production, give you a production Convex URL. So let's do that. So let's create a new terminal down here. Let's do npx convex deploy. So it says you're currently developing against your dev environment, your prod deployment. It serves traffic at this URL. Make sure that your publish client is configured with this URL. For instructions, see here. So do you want to push your code to your prod deployment? And we basically say why here to do it. Now, this is basically means that we can switch between these two. We can work in our development environment, in our app project here. And then when we're ready to deploy to our production environment, we can do npx convex deploy, and that will deploy to our production environment. And you can see it's added all of this stuff to our production environment. And if we go to Convex here, if we go to Convex and we switch to our production environment, you'll be able to see the same tables in here. We've got all of our tables in here. These are all empty. It's basically just created the same setup in production as we have in development. And what's great about using Convex is that it means we can develop our app using our development instance and make changes without worrying if we're going to affect anyone on the production version of our application. So that is now live. So here's what we have to do. Go to your Convex dashboard, select your production project, and then go to settings and environment variables. So we're going to go into our production version here. We're going to go to settings, environment variables. We're going to add our environment variables, and we're going to add our OpenAI API key. We're going to add our Polar access token. So let's go and add those. So we're just going to copy these over from our development environment here. So we've got our OpenAI API key. So let's copy these over. In fact, let's just do copy all, and this will, because we need to add all of these to our production environment, we can go and we can go add, and we can paste all of our variables in here, click save, and then we've got all of our environment environment variables in our production environment in Convex. Update Polar from Sandbox to production. You need to change 2 files in your codebase. Update checkout URL in trial.tsx, currently in line 7. So let's go to trial.tsx. In line 7 here, this is our checkout URL. So let's go back to Polar, and this is our Sandbox account here. And we've got our actual account here. So let's go to our products, and we've got our checkout links. We've got this checkout link here, which is for the products that we set up earlier in the video for our monthly subscription pricing. We're going to paste that into there. That is our checkout URL. Actually, we need to add a redirect in here as well, because if we go to our Sandbox environment, we have a redirect in our checkout in our Sandbox environment. So let's go into this. Let's go to checkout links. We go to here, and we've got our success URL. So what we need to do is we need to copy and paste this into our success URL, but we need to change the domain here to our actual domain, which is getinkwell.app. So we're going to change that, getinkwell.app. If we go back to Polar, so it is getinkwell.app. That's going to be checkout success. And then we're going to save that link. Let's update our checkout link. And I think what we're going to need to do here is to update this bit. And then paste that in there, and then we'll save that. And then change to your production checkout link. So const checkout URL, we've changed that there. Oh, it's your, so this is giving us instructions to do it. So it should be your production checkout link, API.polar v1 checkout links, your production checkout link. So let's copy it from here. This is the correct instruction. So we've got this in here, your production checkout link. We're going to need to go back, and we're going to need to copy this bit here. So let's paste that into there. Got the / in it as well. So we've updated that. You'll get the production checkout link ID from your production Polar dashboard. So we've done that. Update customer portal API in http.ts. We need our production Polar credentials here. So if we can go to, let's have a look here. Let's click on this file to go to here. So we need to just change this to this here. That's all. We don't need to get any other URL there. It's just removing Sandbox basically from that. So let's change that, and then we need to get our production Polar credentials. So we need to go into Polar, into our actual Polar account here, go to settings, go all the way down to the bottom, create a new token, and then we're going to call this Inkwell. I'm going to give this no expiration and select all, and then create that. And we're going to copy this over, and then what we need to do is we need to create a new access token with appropriate permissions. Copy the token for use in the Convex environment variables, go to products and create your product, get your checkout link ID. So what we need to do here, it says configure Polar webhook for production. This is for our webhook. We actually need to go into Convex. So this hasn't given us 100% of the right instructions here, and we need to add the access token to this one here. So this is different. So that's what we've just created in Polar to create that access token there, which is this one. And then we're going to add the webhook secret for our webhook we've created in Polar here. And we actually need to create a new Polar webhook. So add a new webhook endpoint, HTTP, your Convex deployment, webhooks Polar. So we need to have our Convex deployment, which is this one, and it's .site instead of .cloud. So it will be, let's copy this over. Let's go over to Convex. Let's go over to Polar. Let's add, so this is going to be the webhook, and we're going to copy this .cloud URL, and then we're going to change that to .site in Polar. We're going to paste it into this section here, so we can actually remove that from there. Change that to .site, and then we're going to go raw. We're going to select all. We're going to create, that's going to create our endpoint here. So that has created our endpoint URL for the Polar webhook. We could just subscribe to these. I just subscribe to all just quickly. We can change that later. And then we have to configure the Vercel deployment. So we also, there's one more thing that we need to do here is we need to copy the webhook secret over to Convex. And then we're going to store that environment variable. So that is saved. So all of the environment variables are set up on Convex. Our webhook our product and our checkout is set up on Polar, on the actual live instance of Polar. We're going to be able to monitor this when we go live and we actually deploy our app. Environment variables in Vercel. So we configure the Vercel deployment in your Vercel dashboard, add these environment variables. So this is your production convex URL. So this is the same one that we copied over here, and we're going to add this to our environment variables in Vercel. So we're going to create a project in Vercel now. So let's go to Vercel, let's go to dashboard, let's go to overview. Let's add a new project. What we're going to do is we're going to add, first we're going to push. So let's do a new agent here, and we're going to say push this code base to, we're going to go to our GitHub account here, copy the URL for this GitHub repo, and we are going to send that. So this is going to push the entire code base to GitHub so that all of the latest code is in GitHub. So it's committing the changes that we've made and it's pushing everything to GitHub. So the code base has now been pushed to GitHub. There's 5 commits that were pushed, including the 4 ones that were local and 1 new commit from the latest changes. So if we refresh this now, we'll be able to see that this was just updated and there's a lot more files in there now. So all of these have just been added. One thing to know here is that any files that have a lock on them are not included. So this includes local environment variables. So you see in this project, you've got env.local here, and any file with this icon on it, basically this is cursor, filed in cursor, cursor ignore, cursor ignore. These are not going to be pushed to here. We've got a couple here that we actually want to delete. So we want to delete, let's delete this file from our code base. So we're storing them in Convex. So we don't need to have these in our app project. And then we just click commit changes to delete that file. And we say deleted private key, commit those changes. And we're going to go do the same thing for this private key that we generated here as well, just so that we don't have these changes live on GitHub or accessible by people on GitHub. We go back to this repo, we don't have those private files now. And one thing to look for is just the lock, the kind of lock symbol in cursor, just if you're unsure about whether something should be committed to GitHub or not, just to make sure that those aren't. So here we go. So the code base has been successfully pushed to GitHub. So we're now going through preparing this for deployment still. So we're going to configure our Vercel deployment. So now that we've done that, let's go back to Vercel and let's attach this Inkwell v5 import into this project in Vercel. I'm just going to call this Inkwell. And in this environment variables section here, we're going to follow these instructions to add the Vite convex URL here. So this is basically, we'll just be pointing this at this app at our Convex backend, which is here. So this is going to know to connect to our Convex backend with this value, basically, because this is our production instance, our production environment for Convex. So now we can deploy. The next things that we need to do here is so we can additional production considerations. So we can add the webhook signature verification, which we basically skipped earlier in the setup because it was causing us some issues. So we could basically verify the Polar webhook signatures. We can do that as well. Add the Polar webhook secret to Convex environment variables and implement signature verification. So we can add that back in with a new agent and then redeploy, and also update the cause settings. So consider restricting cause for production. So change this to your production domain. So that's going to add an extra level of security there as well. So now we try to deploy this. This is probably a really super simple issue if you're a developer, but I'm a non-technical person kind of going through this. So I'm going to kind of give you a guide of approaching this as a non-technical person. Is we're going to copy this error from Vercel as this has gone to deploy this. I've probably missed something really obvious here, and developers are probably shouting at the screen right now, but I'm just going to go back into cursor here. I'm going to open up a new agent, and then I'm just going to ask it what's happening, basically. So let's put it into ask, and let's say when I deploy this app from Vercel, getting these errors, can you help me investigate and identify what is happening and help me fix? I'm just going to paste these errors back in here, put it into ask mode. We've got Opus 4.5 to ask these questions to. It's basically going to break down exactly what we need to do here to get this deployed and working in Vercel. So Opus has broken down exactly what the issue is here. Basically, there's 2 problems. So problem 1 is this process.env is not recognized in Convex files. And then problem 2 is the incorrect type imports from data model. And it's kind of identified like how to fix these issues in our code and what lines we need to fix the issues on. So we can basically say, put this into agent mode and say, let's make these changes. And then we're going to re-push all of these changes to GitHub and then try deploying again from Vercel. So here are the changes that have been applied to these files. The build should now succeed on Vercel. You can redeploy to verify. So let's keep all of these changes. Let's go back to the editor and let's commit these changes to our repository. Let's say fixed Vercel deployment issues. Let's commit these changes and then let's go back to our editor and to our agent view, create a new agent and say push this to GitHub, and that should push this to our GitHub repository so that we can redeploy from Vercel. So now we've updated our GitHub repository with those fixed changes. We can go back to Vercel and we're going to click deploy here and see what happens again when we try to deploy to Vercel. So we're still getting some issues here related to Convex in the deployment. We are getting less error messages. So I've just copied these error messages back into Dia here basically to try and understand exactly what they mean before we deploy this. And this is something again that you can do if you're non-technical, just to ask LLMs questions about anything that is going on before you do it so that you get a better understanding of what it's trying to do. And it basically says that here are some stuff that we need to do to fix it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these errors back into Cursor as well. And I'm also going to give it like some idea of some stuff that we have to do here. I'm going to copy these in and go to a new agent and say, we're getting these errors when deploying to Vercel. Can you help me fix them? And then we're going to copy some of the direction given from Dia here. So what to do, install no type definitions. Let's paste that in here. So this is basically going to run this command to install the node type definitions. And then the next thing that we're going to do is add node to our tsconfig types. So we're going to copy this over and copy this code as well. And then I'm just going to ask Opus to say like, check that this is correct and add if it is. So that's going to go through and fix those errors based on this issue that we're getting with Vercel deployment. So Opus 4.5 has been running for about 15 minutes and it tried all these different approaches to try and fix this error, and it finally found this one line in this one tsconfig.app.json file that it needed to change, and the app is now building correctly. So this hopefully, fingers crossed, will fix this issue. It says that it was built in 27.68 seconds. The build is now successful. Let me clean up this tsconfig.json file, and the actual fix was just adding node to this other tsconfig file basically. So we've got that fixed. Now once this is finished, so we're going to do npm run build. It's going to build the app now. That's successfully done in 3.91 seconds. It's going to run some other stuff here just to clean up the generated files. Errors are fixed. Here's a summary of what happened. This is why, part of the reason why Opus 4.5 is so good. It has gone around in it kind of investigating this error, investigating this bug that we kind of came over. It was like particularly tricky, and it's just made this one code change, and that has fixed the issue. So we're going to commit this. So let's go back over to our editor. Let's go here. Let's say fixed convex deploy issue. We're going to commit this. Yes. We're going to go back to our project here. We're going to go back to the agents view. I am going to create a new agent and let's say push this to GitHub. And let's update our GitHub repository and try and redeploy our app to Vercel. So that's pushed to GitHub. One thing I'm going to check now is to go over to GitHub and just check that this tsconfig file has the correct information in it. So we can see this updated 2 minutes ago. They're only the files that were updated to change. tsconfig.app.json. Let's go in here. We've got node added here. So that was the thing that was causing the issue. So now we've sorted that. Let's go back to Vercel and let's try and redeploy this app. So now we have successfully deployed our app to Vercel, it looks like it's missing some fonts by the look of it from the screenshot. So we're going to fix that issue as well. Let's go, you can do instant preview here, or we can just continue to dashboard to see this project. So this is our project, Inkwell, and we've got it on this deployment here. So in this domain here, we can access this here. Oh, the fonts are working correctly here. So we can go through and let's try and sign up on our application. Let's create an account here. So let's see if the accounts we created in the development version won't work. So we're going to have to sign up here. So let's actually sign up with my real email address here. And we can see if this app actually works now that we've got it live on a URL. This is going to ask me about starting my free trial. So let's start free trial. That should take me to Polar. What I'm going to do here is let's go back to Polar and just create a discount code so that we can use this, so that we can just test that this works. So we've got test, which is minus 100% discount. Probably not a good code. I'm going to delete this just in case you go on and try and use this yourself. Let's go back to our app here and we're going to go through, add our card details. I'll add the discount code here as well. Apply. You already have an active subscription. Okay, interesting. So I did sign up with this. So because I have tested it on this one already, let's try that again. Okay, here we go. Open dashboard. Let's log out because I already tried it with that account. So let's try it with a different account here. And I'm going to go through to the start free trial screen here. Start free trial. This will go through to Polar. Let's add my details in here. So let's add test, apply this discount code. Let's add our card details here. Let's click start trial. Hopefully this should redirect us back to the checkout success page. Let's see. I just got an alert on my phone that there's been a card test on my bank account. So that is good. That is working. Let's see where we go from here. Order was successful. Okay, so there is an issue here. This is going to get inkwell.app, the checkout success page. So what we need to do here, because that's redirecting to the wrong URL. So we need to connect this to an actual domain. Let's, for now, just go to this app again on this domain here. We're going to open dashboard. We're now able to access our documents. So it checks that I had an active subscription then. It let me into my documents here. I can create a document. I can start writing. I can add my knowledge here. I can use the AI assistant. And let's see if the AI assistant works here. Yes, it did. Let's insert that into the document. Let's change it to a heading 2. Let's open the system instructions here. Let's add some instructions here. This is all working. We can rename the document to lemons. We've got a new document called lemons. If I delete that, it deletes. If I go to my profile, I can add system instructions. If I check in Convex, I can go to my data and my tables and I can see I've got users signed up to this app. These two users were just created. They didn't create a document. Okay, a document should be created here. So this is an issue. Let's see. Did I delete it? No, I deleted it. Okay, so let's create this document, do test, and I go back to Convex. We've got a test document. Everything is working with our app. It is live. We have deployed it. You can go to this Vercel and we also need to connect a domain. So we're going to connect a domain. What we can do here is we can go to, in our Vercel project, we can go domains and we can add our domain. We can connect it to production. So that is our app live on Vercel. You can now connect this to a domain. So I've just connected it to getinkwell.app. You just click on domains and then you add your domain in here. That can then deploy to your live domain, and then you've got your application live on your domain, deployed with Vercel. You've got everything set up and ready to go in Convex here and working in your production environment. You can log in, you can use Polar to subscribe to this product. I've left the style guide link in here. I'm just going to leave it up so you can go and have a look at that if you want to afterwards. But this is now all working and live. Our application is up and running and we have everything here ready to go basically. So we've finished our entire cursor build. Thank you for watching the entire video. Let's get into my final thoughts here. And hopefully this has helped you kind of go through the process as a non-technical person. alongside me at the same time, setting up and building an app with these technologies using Cursor. We did it. We built a full application using Cursor. There's probably a bunch of stuff that I've missed, and any developers watching this, please leave some stuff in the comments to help me out, to help other people out building apps with AI in tools like Cursor. I wanted to put together a realistic video showing you the full process from start to finish, even with all of the bugs and the stumbling blocks and all of the stuff we kind of came up against, but just to kind of show you how, when you do come up against stuff like that, how you can fix it, and also to show you how all the component parts, all those fundamentals of building a web app with a tool like Cursor is entirely possible, even if you're non-technical, and just apply a little bit of kind of curiosity and willingness to learn alongside working with the tool to get your application up and running. Now, your application may be completely different. You may want to use completely different tech stack, completely different tools, but this gives you the fundamentals of setting up your database backend and authentication with Convex, setting up payments with something like Polar, and you can set them up with Stripe if you'd rather use Stripe instead as well, and also getting your application fully built in Cursor and then deploying it using Vercel to get it on a live domain so that people can actually go and use your app. And this kind of shows you what a kind of basic app foundation looks like, what a simple app looks like, with a simple onboarding flow with a paywall to get people to start a free trial and sign up, and then be able to manage their subscription from inside their account and do a few little bits of functionality here and there. And so it gives you an idea of exactly what you need to do step by step to build your app. Finally, with Cursor, hopefully this helps you start building your app, or start the process of building your app, or get your app over the line if you're struggling to build it in Cursor. And if you are building apps with AI, or you've got an idea for an app, or you want to start building one, I've got a community where I help people do exactly this. So if you're getting started and you get stuck at any point, this is a perfect place to go. It's a community with over 200 people in it, building real apps with AI and getting real customers. And you can find out more by going over to school.com/AI apps. As always, if you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching this because it is a super long video to get through, please like and subscribe. It really helps me and it helps the channel grow as well. Thank you for watching so much, and I will see you next time.
Build great products. Build great products.